Anita, does anyone have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Just waiting.
I forget what item it's, the Lamine?
Yeah.
Item.
Okay, 7.4?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
so thank you. Need a motion to adopt the minutes? Thank you. All in favor? I guess we need to do that. Motion to accept the closed session meetings May 8th. Thank you. And we have pulled out of the consent agenda 4.2, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8. And I need a motion to move the remainder.
4.9?
Oh, 4.9? Sorry, my bad. Got it, 4.9? Okay, thank you. And just so everyone knows, Councillor Collier is on his way. She's going to be about 10 minutes late, so just so you're aware. Okay, so I believe...
So you need to call the vote on the remainder.
I just did. Renwick moved it.
But you didn't
All in
call the
favor?
vote.
All in favor? All in favor. Everybody's in favor. Okay. 4.2, Councillor Jordan.
Yes. This is on the indexing of municipal development charges. And it states in there that the Statistics Canada non-residential building construction price index from March 2016 to March 2017 indicates an increase of 3.9%. I know that quite often at our budget meetings, residents will come out and say, why are you above the consumer price index? It seems to me that this index is closer to a lot of the things that we do as far as construction, road projects, etc. And I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Certainly, through the chair, your point is very well taken. There are many activities within our operating budget and our capital budget that are construction related. Items like sidewalk construction, road reconstruction, asphalt. So many of these things will have increases of 3.9 and even greater. That's an average over it. So as we often say that our basket of goods is not the same as the consumer price index.
And I think we should, through the process, make that information known, because I think people don't quite understand that as to why ours is higher than the CPR.
Agreed.
I'll move it.
Thank you. All in favor? Councillor Jordan, I think you have 4 or 5 too?
Well, that's the note in there that the installation costs are about $950,000. Have we got an estimate on that?
It's currently out for tender, through the chair, sorry, as we are, it's currently out for tender.
But that would be what we'd approve for budget, considering the installation price as well.
Yes, the installation price, the 950 shown as available budget will be used for the installation.
Okay, thank you.
Move it. All in favor? 4.7, I believe, is Councillor Jordan.
Yes, I just want to ask on this, it's the easement for Enbridge Gas and why there wasn't a fee or any compensation.
I'm sorry, what?
It is road resurfacing is the next.
Yeah, 4.7. Road resurfacing?
Oh, maybe I've got the wrong one. Hold on.
Did I say 4.7? I said 4.7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Pardon?
What was that?
So 4.8 is the easement.
Okay, so
Yeah,
either
4.
7, do you want to do 8 since?
I don't know. Did I
Let's do
go
7.
4.7? If I did, I don't think I meant to.
Okay. You're off the hook.
It's so hard with this when you put notes on it.
Bye-bye now.
That was done well.
4.8?
Yes. Just wondering why we didn't charge a fee or any compensation to the municipalities on this.
So through the chair, typically we don't charge utilities for easement requests of this nature. And in this particular case, the lands that are subject to an easement were conveyed to the town from the developer who's requesting the easement. So it didn't seem appropriate to be charging them for an easement over their own lands. On their own land, so they conveyed to the town.
Just wondered, because a few, it was mentioned at the conference in different places, looking at these types of issues. Is there any thought of looking at fees like this and how we might be compensated?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can take a look at practice in other municipalities if council would like us to get that information.
Well, I think we should look anywhere that if there's an opportunity to make some more revenue that isn't coming from the taxpayer, I think it's worthwhile.
Councilor Oshkosh, did you have anything? Okay. So that's your direction?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to move that? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, so 4-9 was Mayor Parrish.
Yes, this is on the fair housing plan, and I just have a general question with respect to purpose-built rental housing, of which we have, I think, the first project of that nature in town for quite some time through the Medallion development. And I'm just wondering if we have any data that tells us whether, or whether the developer has any data, or whether there's any data out there at all, that tells us whether we're seeking the right range of unit sizes in these buildings. For example, I think somewhere in here it refers to a mix of 1 bedroom and 2 or more bedrooms. But my information tells me that 2 or more bedrooms means effectively 2 bedrooms. That in the Medallion development, buildings A and B, 2 or more bedrooms is exclusively 2 bedrooms. And it seems to me that there are families that have household sizes where they're seeking a 3-bedroom. And so my question is, do we know what those stats are? Are we doing anything to make sure or to encourage there being a little wider selection in unit sizes? This just came to my attention fairly recently with just some, anecdotal kind of conversations with people going, I can't find a 3-bedroom anywhere. And I'm going, okay, let me look into that. So can you address that?
Through the chair. We don't have data GTA-wide with regard to that information. I know with our 2 proposed downtown developments, it is about 70% 1 bedroom and then 30% 2 bedrooms or more.
So am I right when I say 2 bedrooms or more means 2 bedrooms?
2 bedrooms, yes. And I believe the Medallion development currently only has 2 bedrooms, and they don't have 3 bedrooms planned at this point. So we have not done any research to look across the GTA to see what the breakdown of bedroom units is. There is, through the growth plan, a new policy that was put in the growth plan as part of one of the actions through Ontario's Fair Housing Plan, that municipalities can now use different tools, such as official plan policies, to require certain number of units within a multi-unit residential building, be 2-bedroom or more, 2 or 3-bedroom. Right now, we don't have mechanisms to require that.
Yeah, you see, the phrase for me, 2-bedroom or more, is problematic because it doesn't mandate more than two-bedroom. It mandates two-bedroom or more. And so you have larger households that really require three-bedroom. I think there's kind of a built-in prejudice or assumption that once you need three bedrooms, you better go out there and buy a house. But for some people, that isn't an option. They need rental accommodation, and they need, because they have, for example, 4 children, 3 bedrooms. And, you know, one of the basic principles in our official plan, and as I see from this new legislation, is to maximize the range of housing options and affordability and availability out there. And it seems in that niche, we're not doing our job. And I don't know, you know, in the 2 medallion buildings, A and B, just as an example, if there's 500 units, I don't know if there's a demand for 5 3-bedroom or 10. I wouldn't think it would be a huge number, but to not mandate or encourage or do what we can through that process to make sure that that demand, however small or large it is being met. I see us falling down in what perhaps we should be doing, and I'm just wondering if we've considered that, have looked into this new legislation or looked under other planning tools that we can address what is, you know, if the vacancy rate generally in Ajax is 3%, I would venture to guess that the vacancy rate for purpose-built 3 bedrooms is 0, which is a problem, right? So you have any further comment?
Director Smallwood does have a comment, if that's okay.
So I think your experience and mine maybe line up. There is 3 bedrooms or larger than 2 bedrooms is something that you don't see being built very frequently these days in either the rental market or the condo market, in my experience. And I think that's something that we can look at in our housing strategy study that we are beginning later, probably the end of this year, as the census data rolls out. So that's something we can look at, and I think we have some new tools with the fair housing policy that could potentially help us out. And it has, in my experience, and Toronto has been looking at trying to deal with this. It has been a difficult thing to deal with under the current, you know, the previous legislation. It really didn't help you out very much on setting a requirement. But we have done that in Toronto for certain developments, and it's been a negotiation with the developer to guarantee the delivery of either 3-bedroom units or units that could be converted in the future to 3 bedrooms with knockout panels and that sort of thing. So certainly it's something that I think we can look at and should be looking at in our housing strategy study.
Is it too late to do that with Building B?
Yes, I believe it is too late to do that for Building B.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashby?
Thank you, Madam. Actually, the director answered some of my questions here. But just further to what the mayor was mentioning, I think because we don't have those official plan policies now, like she said, it's going to be more of a town position of encouraging and having that negotiation. Do we have an affordable housing policy right now in our OP?
Through the chair, we have policies in the official plan that speak to trying to achieve a 25% of our housing stock to be affordable based on the province's definition of affordable.
Okay, because again, what the director says, that usually ends up in negotiations, also through Section 37 and so forth, to get that affordable housing component. I think generally in the city of Toronto, we look at, I believe it's, I think 10 or 15% of the units have to be affordable. And it is a struggle to get 3 bedrooms plus, or even up more than 2 bedrooms in a typical high-rise residential development. But I think if we have those tools in our OP, then we'll be in a much stronger position to make that argument.
Any other questions? Councilor Jordan?
Yes, and I'm just concerned, and I know you don't have all the answers here, but we know there's a real need for more affordable housing, and yet the rent controls seem to work against some of the other things that are encouraging it. And I'm wondering, particularly with new builds such as Medallion, can they set that rent at any rate that they feel is feasible? My thoughts is that you would set it at a higher rate to begin with, so that at least you're getting compensated in consideration of the rent controls being in place.
Through the chair, that is one of the concerns with new rentals, is that they will set the rents quite high, knowing that they'd only be able to increase what the guideline has per year, and the guideline is capped at a maximum of 2.5%. So through the guideline, you cannot see more than 2.5%. In 2017, it is only 1.5%. That's increase.
So it's that on top of wherever they start when they're initially renting. Well, when do we expect to see the regulations and all the details?
Through the chair, some of the regulations have been passed with regard to rent control. Rent control has been passed. The other regulations, there is no timeline. There is no timeline released as to when those regulations would be going through. So we don't know at this point.
And we haven't had any discussions with any of the developers as far as the effect of this legislation.
Through the chair, we have not.
I'm just concerned it may change things.
Any
Anyway,
further
thank you.
questions?
Well, I have one further,
Yep.
just following up from Councilor Jordan's last point. We've done a lot of things in our downtown to promote intensification in our downtown and purpose-built rental accommodation, which has been, I think it's fair to say, largely successful so far. And we now have the imposition of rent controls on not just historical buildings, but new builds. And I think that that is a significant factor that might throw a curve in to where we want to go in the future. Obviously, we'll have to monitor that, but do we have any feedback or indication as to what this is going to do to our macro plans, especially for the downtown area moving forward?
I don't think we do at this point in time, and I quite frankly think the industry itself is wrestling with what it's going to mean for them. As you know, there are some different directions in the fair housing policy. There is the rent control that's being extended to all new builds, but then on top of that, there's the new multi-residential tax rate as well, which I think was meant to kind of balance out the impact of the rent control. Whether it will do that or not, I'm not sure, but I have, over the years, dealt with a lot of developers and tried to encourage rental housing over those years. And one of the significant factors has been a rent control concern, that it could be extended and that it would impact the ability to make the kind kind of returns that they felt was necessary. So I think we will be talking to the development industry in the future, and I'm sure we will be hearing from them their thoughts on the matter, particularly as we move through the housing strategy study process.
Thank you.
Judge, move that?
Do it.
All in favor? Okay, that ends the consent agenda. So next on the agenda is occasional use of on-street parking permit system.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few brief comments before we open it up to questions. One of the things, of course, this was very much cross-departmental. I may be the face of on-street parking, but I'm far from the expert on on-street parking. So certainly if there are any questions from council, it may not be me that answers them. So just very quickly, I think somebody very early on in the process, as we've been looking at this now, as council knows for some period of time, is never lose sight of the fact that roads were made for driving, not for parking. So I think that has been somewhat of an overriding principle as we went through. So there is a framework, that we are putting forward that we will be consulting with the public on. And again, very much based on best practices, and that's why you'll see consistently through the report the use of the word occasional. That's consistent with what's done in Durham Lakeshore municipalities. We didn't go too much outside our borders, but certainly there's very few municipalities that will have something that's permanent, trying to deal with the issue of too many cars and not as many houses. So that is the best practices that we've seen. But we also like to put a Made in Ajax spin on things as well too. So you'll see council's framework, the framework that staff's put together that we'll be consulting on, is dealing with 24 hours rather than an overnight thing. Because it became quite clear to staff that the problem doesn't go away at 7 o'clock in the morning. If your driveway is not available, or if you have guests for the entire weekend, there's no magical cutoff to say, well, by 9 o'clock you have to drag everybody out of bed and move the cars. So we positioned it that any type of permit would be 24 hours, not necessarily just an overnight thing. And last but certainly not least, and I think it's been mentioned many times in the report, this is a very, maybe divisive is too strong of a word, but people have very, very strong opinions on on-street parking, ranging from I don't want anybody ever parking on the street ever near my house, in front of my house, there's too many cars, to I got to have a chance to park on the street and guests and so on. So that's why staff came up with the approach of really making sure before council makes a decision on this that we have a framework that council's comfortable with, and will be very, very extensive consultation throughout the summer months, using all our good channels to make sure that when council makes a decision, because sometimes we use the age-old adage, sometimes be careful what you wish for. We want to make sure that when council finally makes the decision, they have a very, very clear indication of as best we can from a consultative process and surveying the public where the thoughts land. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to open up to any questions. And
Thank you. Councillor Ashby?
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, this is very, very divisive, and I think in 2009, I think I made a lot of noise about it, and I don't know whether that precipitated the study or not. But since I've been on council, parking, speeding, sorry Dave, but snow removal, those have been my number one complaints in almost the last 10 years. I like the approach. When you focused on areas to implement this, I think we should look at areas where there are like townhouses, street townhouses, as opposed to the single-family detached dwellings. The problem, and again, it's 50-50. When I get a phone call of somebody that's been living in their house for 15, 20 years, there's one vehicle, double car garage, there's one vehicle, their partner gets a job, and now they have a vehicle, and Johnny and Mary grow up, and now they have a vehicle as well too. And they might have a third child, and that third vehicle is left on the sidewalk. So I don't think it's our problem to solve. What I really would like to say is you probably outgrown that house, but I don't say that. But no, it's something that we need to look into. So it's easy for us to say, okay, we'll allow on-street parking in your neighborhood, but for that family that doesn't need on-street parking, having a vehicle parked in front of their house, guess who they're going to call? They're not going to be happy about that. So finding that balance between trying to, accommodate our residents as best we can, they have to take some responsibility for the matter as well too. But I like the approach and just to see what sort of options out there. I know we looked at our own inventory of parking areas, and I know that comes with some liability issues and some operational issues as well too. Have we looked at school sites as part of this whole study?
Through the chair, we've not looked at school sites, and I would suggest if the school board would probably turn us down for the same reasons, likely we wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think the other issue you've got to, so again, Madam Chair, the other issue we've got as well too is that practical. That was one of the reasons why we didn't, well, the main reason why we didn't bring forward campus facility was basically liability and interference with operations, albeit that the school boards stay empty. We'd also be in a situation where I don't think we would have the authority to permit, in essence, private property, which is school board property. So is it something we looked at? No. Is it something that we see as a viable option? Just probably not for those very same reasons.
I just don't want residents coming back and asking that question. Well, although it's not in our jurisdiction, I think probably as a courtesy and as to tie up the whole study, open it up to the school sites as well. I know what the answer will be, but at least we could say that we extended that, we asked that question. I don't know what the plan is to encourage residents to participate in the survey. And we really, as councillors, we really need to hear from the residents. Because I don't want to hear a year from now, well, I didn't even know this was happening. Why is there a car parked on my street? So with our communication team, I think we really need to encourage as many residents as possible to participate in this survey. The 3-hour parking limit, I know that's province-wide. Do we have jurisdiction to amend that? Whether it be during the week or on weekdays, do we have the ability to extend that 3-hour parking limit, and would that be a part of the study as well too?
Through the chair, you've now got above my knowledge base. In terms of that, we did look at potentially eliminating the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., but again, there was too many difficulties around snow clearing, that kind of stuff. And bearing in mind that our the council endorsed approach is complaint based. We're not out there outside of that, driving around for, looking for people to be parked there. So I'll ask somebody who's smarter than me about whether or not the 3 to 6 is in our jurisdiction to change, probably Mr. Hannon.
Through the chair, I believe you were asking about the 3-hour limit, whether that could be extended to 6 or 7 hours. That would be within our mandate. We could amend the bylaw.
Yeah, and then to Rob's comment about, so snow clearing and so forth, like we could tailor it to Ajax, during the winter months where we obviously have those conflicts with snow clearing, maybe we stick to the 3 hours. But during the summer months, where we don't have that snow clearing, maybe there's an opportunity there on long weekends and so forth to just extend that. Because I tell you, this is where things go kind of off rails with I don't know if I can speak for all the council, but this is on-street parking is a big problem.
Through the chair, currently the traffic bylaw is under review by staff, and that's definitely items that we will be looking at.
Okay.
There's more than just the operational issues about snow removal. Just getting around on some of the streets in July may be difficult as well with the amount of on-street parking. It's not emergency service vehicles, EMS to get through is extremely difficult as well.
Just sort of, if I can add to that, yeah, it's not something where we want to encourage on-street parking in that way, just for some of the reasons Mr. Hannon said, getting emergency vehicles, access and so on. And I think the intent is to, roll out something that, we'll get feedback on, but I think, when it finally comes, back to council in September, I wouldn't see if council decides to go down this path, it will be potentially with some adjusted parameters, but it would be done kind of on a one-year trial basis, because until you actually do something like this in practice, as much as we spent tons and tons of staff time thinking about every different permutation and combination, that you can, there'll be something that until you actually hit the ground running that you'll see. So, but I think, allowing this occasional type use deals with those, those specific issues. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jordan?
Oh, I just want to, first of all, ask how you're doing the survey. Is it online or?
Through the chair, we haven't worked through all the details yet, but absolutely, we'll use all those tools that we do that really generate social media, online, absolutely online, social media. We'll take opportunities at town events or whatever. So there'll be a full court press. The question for summer of 2017 will be about on-street parking. So no matter where you go, if it's a town event, you will see a question about whether we'll have hard copy surveys online, social media, our signboards, our electronic boards, or whatever. That will be the most critical piece for council to make the decision. So that's why we've given it such a long window of time. The survey will go, be available, by the end of the month or whatever, and we plan to do that all through July and August, and probably into even early September. So to make sure that the council's got that full information.
We're not going to win whatever we do. I know that. And I do have some, even your comment, roads are for roads, yeah, that's true. But I mean, people have always parked on the streets for as long as I know, and when I grew up in Toronto. So, and I have sympathy for the families who buy a townhouse. Everybody would love to live in a big house with a 3-car garage. But guess what? Everybody can't afford it. And, they have, probably young people who have jobs or attending school or university. It's a real problem for them. So I hope that we can come to something and look at how we can make it a little bit easier for those who it isn't just visitors that they're having an issue with. I wonder, I know you looked mainly around here, but I've heard comments that Ottawa looks at things very differently, and I wonder if you could do some research on what the regulations or bylaws are in Ottawa and their experience, because I mean, Ottawa certainly does get a lot more snow than we do. So I understand that they'll allow people to park on streets except when it's forecast for snowfall or ice, whatever. But I would like some more information about that.
Through the chair, we can certainly look at that. Keep in mind too, we always look at the wealth of experience I have sitting beside me in terms of the issues that we face in Ajax. So we're also not necessarily thinking we're going to go out and particularly change behavior or whatever. So it's really looking at the wealth of experience we've had over the years on the ground. But we will certainly look at Ottawa to see if there's some things we can beg and borrow and steal from their particular approach. As you'll note in the report as well too, we are putting consistent with others, you get 10 times per license plate where you can do that. But interestingly enough, the in-depth analysis we did in 2015 showed that 90% of the tickets were issued to residents, not visitors. So as much as we call it an occasional thing, this does still provide some help to some of those people on an occasional basis. But you will, short of going to a permanent on-street parking system, you will never have anything that will deal adequately with the people that have 5 cars and only 2 or 3 legal spots without creating something on the other side. And we'll get that feedback as we go through the process. But we'll certainly look at Ottawa. We will certainly reach out to the school boards to look at that. We pretty much know what the answer is, but we'll officially close the loop with the school boards on that and look at Ottawa. And we'll look a little bit further as well too. But
I'd appreciate
yeah,
that, because I think this is a tough one.
It's a
no
tough one.
question.
Councilor Collier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just first through you to Mr. Meredith, how many snow events did we have last year from November 1st to December 1st?
November 1st to December 1st?
Yeah. Do we have any? I mean, the odds are maybe we might have had a small one. I think maybe the time might be a little bit restrictive, November 1st, April 1st. I think we would probably push it to December, but I agree. We absolutely need to make a change to this system somehow. It is a problem, and I'm not talking about what Councilor Ashley refers to, the people with way too many cars. And I'll use Toronto as an example. They have a great on-street parking program. Nobody challenges it. They know. Like, they're not going to sit there and complain to bylaw. They know that there's no parking, and they deal with it. If they're going to have 5 cars in a house with no parking, they're going to find a spot. They're going to make arrangements somewhere else. They're going to, and we need to do that, or people need to do that here as well. But this is not to deal with these people, this is to deal with people who have visitors and occasional use. There will be a cost to this, and we need to not have that cost, you know, absorbed. We need to collect that cost. And I think we really need to go to more proactive traffic enforcement or parking enforcement in this town. Because again, we all get the examples, I've parked here forever and nobody's ever said anything. We have to go through the whole explanation that this is a complaint-driven system, but it shouldn't be a complaint-driven system. If I'm in Toronto and I don't spend my $10.70 by going online and getting the thing and putting it in my window, I will have a ticket in the morning. Luckily, I'm lucky if the car is not towed in the morning. It hasn't happened, but that's the way it is. And we have our snow issues, and we have cars parked all over Ajax during major snow events, and the plows go around them. I think they should be towed, but we don't enforce that. I think we have the authority to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hannon. But
Through the chair, we do have the authority, we don't have tow trucks, that's the issue.
okay, but I guess what I'm getting at is we have these bylaws, no on-street parking, no parking during snow events, but they're not enforced, so they're taken advantage of. And we need to enforce them. What's the point of having a bylaw if we're not going to enforce it? So this needs to be addressed. I agree, we have to do it right, we have to go out to the public and do it properly. But we also need to be enforcing our bylaws we have now. And make it so it's not, you know, this is the exception to the rule. This is the rule, and people know it, and they follow it.
Yeah. Through the chair, I don't let Mr. Hannon, you know, jump in if and when I misspeak, but we got to make sure we don't confuse the two issues as well, too. This is kind of the issue here. If council wanted to go to a proactive enforcement, that will come at a significant cost. We're not resourced to do that 24/7.
Yeah, it says 2 more officers.
No. That is 2 more officers to do a permitted system review. It'd be a lot more than 2 officers if you were looking at a full, comprehensive, proactive throughout the entire town. But we haven't done that look because that's not been council's approach. The complaint-based approach is not an uncommon one, you know, but I'll let Mr. Hannon speak to that. But you'd have a lot more than 2 part-time. The 2 part-time bylaw officers was only to deal with a paid permit system. You'd be looking at a lot more of a cost for that and not necessarily the revenue payback either. So you could be having a net add to the tax bill as we're looking to get down to 1.75%. As well as, you know, again, potentially creating more angst for people, just as you've said, like, I'm not bothering anybody, I'm here for work. But I'll let Mr. Hannon speak a bit more on that one.
So currently we know from the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. proactive enforcement, it takes almost between 20 and 24 hours to hit all the streets in Ajax. And to do that on a paid proactive system, we would need probably anywhere between 6 to 8 officers on the road every night to ensure that we're equally enforcing the bylaw throughout the entire town.
I would never expect us to cover every street and everything every night. I'm talking about sort of a roving patrol where it's like our parks. I'm sure they don't, the security don't get to every park every night. It's not. It's a matter of you hit each area maybe once, twice a week, and people, they don't know whether they're going to get hit that night or not, right? But it's just the thought that this could happen is enough of a deterrent, I would think. We won't know till we try it, but I wasn't suggesting we hire enough staff that we blanket the town every night. So I would suggest that with the 2 you talked about, it can probably be done on a roving basis. Is that true? Because if you're going to have permits, they're going to be all over town, so they're going to have to go all over town anyway.
And with paid, through the chair, with paid parking permits, that's one of the issues that we have to deal with as well. That is, if somebody has spent money to park a vehicle on the street and somebody is parked in front of them without a permit, we have to ensure that that vehicle is getting ticketed as well. Or we'll be getting just as many complaints from the people that have paid the money for the permits.
Okay. I understand it's going to be a steep learning curve. We have to do something, so I'm interested to see what comes from the public consultation. Thank you.
Just if I can, Madam Chair, I neglected to answer, respond to whenever Councilor asked me his additional comments. This will be a town-wide system. You know, we talked about trying to chunk it off, but again, for fairness, it has to be for all areas in the town, subject to the restrictions that are already in place. It's again, to have only selected places would be an administrative nightmare, and not so much administrative for us, but extraordinarily confusing for the residents, saying, well, you can park here, but you can't park here, you know, with a permit, or you can park on this side or not that side. So it is a town, it would be a town-wide, you know, permit system, you know, subject to the limitations that are listed in the report around closeness to intersections near hydrants and all those types of things, so.
Through the chair, just to be clear, I wasn't trying to be funny about the tow trucks. During winter events, snow events, we had council's endorsement to tow vehicles interfering with snow. However, once we called all the tow truck companies, they are so backlogged with emergencies with DRPS and the 401 that they couldn't respond. By the time they could, the vehicles were already moved.
Well, I did contact you about that.
Yeah, so I wasn't trying to be funny. We actually don't have access to tow truck. Unless we brought it internally, there would be no access to.
That was my next question. Have we looked at acquiring one and having it for use during snow removal?
It has been discussed, it's never been looked at, but through the traffic review, we will definitely look
Probably
at
should.
it.
Okay, thanks.
Council Brown.
Yes, thank you. I wouldn't take too much because of the tickets for the resident. Usually residents park on the street and allow their company to park on the driveway, so as they get the ticket, not their company. So don't forget that. I know a number of people that do that. So we've had a number of presentations at council from neighborhoods that were looking for an on-street parking permit 12 months of the year. So we said to them we were going to look into this. There's a report coming to council in the fall, and this is the report that's coming. So we will, if council endorse this, they're saying we will not have permitted parking 12 months a year or whatever.
Through this plan that we're proposing right now, there would be 12 months a year. The restriction would be that during an active snow event as declared by operations, no on-street parking would be permitted. That's how other municipalities have been dealing with that.
So, and this was only occasional though?
Yes.
This is for the...
So they will not be able to have a permit to park, forgetting about the snow events, 12 months a year in front of their house or wherever. So because we've had a number of presentations that come and we put them off by saying that.
Sure. Well, through the chair, we put them off by saying we were going to look at it. This is staff's recommendation based on our research is to only implement, which is again is the best practice, occasional use permits. You know, Toronto's been used as a frame of reference, but you have to remember in a lot of cases, Toronto has no off-street parking whatsoever. So it's not a situation where somebody has like 3 vehicles in one spot, depending on the makeup of a neighborhood. Not all over the place, but in certain places perhaps down on the beach or whatever, there is not a single off-street. So they're getting parking on the street because that's all they have to park. So, yeah, certainly, yeah, we've had requests for permanent, we've had requests for occasional, based on our research, knowing the Ajax experience, that we'll be going down the occasional. Now, it's up to council to decide that, but we're saying that a permanent system is not feasible nor recommended for Ajax. And an occasional thing kind of balances the best of both worlds. And although a lot of them, and I think Councilor Brown, you just said it, although it's talked about guests and visitors, it's also for the residents, because if somebody's got their driveway out of commission for a week because they've got a contractor in, then they can, for 7 days, they can, or 10 days, they can park on the street 24/7 with a permit. So yes, it is about guests and visitors, but it's actually more about residents. And when you get back to 90% of the tickets being issued to residents as opposed to that. And council's right. There's not going to be any perfect system on this, and we're going to be darned if we do and darned if we don't. But I think we've got to start with something, get that full breadth of consultation. Certainly, we'll come back with with the council with a recommendation, and even at that point, it would be recommended to do it as a test year or whatever, not to say we're carved in stone. So.
Thank you. I just wanted the council to be aware of that, because we've all, a number of residents off by saying this report is going to come to council and council.
And if I can absolutely, I can guarantee you some of the comments we get is we want a permanent system, and council will get that information as well too. I don't see anything changing staff's opinion that we would ever move back to that after all the research and knowing the Ajax experience, but that's a very common point for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Dives.
Thank you. I understand we're going through some growing pains. This is the suburbs and people don't expect these things, but we are growing up a little bit here. So some of the concerns that I've also heard are directly a result of children that never leave home.
We can't fix that.
And parents moving back, and it's just a way, that's just how life has evolved and things are changing. And it's obvious that in the more compact communities, there are always issues. So I'm wondering through the survey if there's any way we can kind of get a sense of that by asking if they do or have had adult children at home for any length of time. And now with the healthcare system changing, and if, people being able to stay at home longer, that's also an issue too. So they get an extra car with that sometimes as well. So I'm just wondering if we're looking at different type of statistical information that we need to access, that will give us a sense of how things are going to move forward.
Yeah, through the chair, we can try and weave those questions in, although, a survey tends to be needs to be fairly short and pointed to kind of get your core answers. We can certainly, perhaps, and you don't want to get too much anecdotal information, otherwise you end up with a bit, but we will potentially see why somebody is in support of that. You just mentioned about the healthcare. One of the reasons why we came up with the 24 hours was to take into effect there is a lot of healthcare, that come during the day, visiting nurses and so on. So that was also part of our rationale to have permits there. But we'll see what we can incorporate in terms of what people's positioning is as to why they may want that. So we'll see what we can do, but I say the survey needs to be as pointed as possible.
Would be part of the surveying that we do every 4 years, perhaps?
It could be once we get this up and running, sure. That would be a logical thing potentially going forward, sure.
Thank you.
Mayor Parrish.
Yeah, in your outreach and your surveying, is the status quo going to be an option? Some members of council have given the opinion that things have to change and the status quo isn't an option. I don't necessarily agree with that. So my question is, will we be basically getting feedback that says this number of people support the status quo, this number of people support this number of people? Because I think that going forward, it wouldn't be a fair approximation of things unless we got feedback on the status quo.
Through the chair, 9 times out of 10 I would agree with putting status quo out there. I don't think status quo is an option for us right now, in all honesty, with all the requests from the public, with the demands we have around fire. If council wishes, we can make that as an option, but I think if the status quo is there as an option, if for whatever reason we get feedback, that's not going to stop the number of complaints and so on. So, we certainly see there is a need for some type of system. We're no longer, when we look at our comparator municipalities, we know we constantly get complaints from, from people with whether it's themselves or their visitors. So, we can put that out as status quo, but I think that doesn't make the problem go away if people want to stay with status quo.
There's nothing that will make the problem go away, in my view. I've been around long enough to know that when we didn't have the resources or weren't policing on-street parking and ticketing and overnight parking, etc., there was a tremendous amount of complaints about, I can't get over my driveway. There's a car parked right on the curb opposite where I pull out. I'm concerned that I'm going to hit them or they're going to hit me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The streets clogged, et cetera. And I'm just concerned that, sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. And so having some kind of input as to whether or not there's a significant portion of the population that says, you know what, I know these things and I'm kind of content with the way things are now. And if council didn't have that kind of knowledge base to say, okay, there's 20% of the population that want to go to this modified permit system, but by the way, there's 27% of the population that are really happy with the way things are right now. I mean, I think council will want to know that in their decision making.
Yeah, through the chair, we can certainly see how we can put that in as part of that, as long as council understands the status quo doesn't make the problem go away. And dealing with some residents. We can look to fit that in. I just chatting with Mr. Hannon there. We track all complaints that we get in as well too, so that report coming back will have it detailed on all the complaints we get. And I think I said this in the report. Council tends to only hear from those who get tickets as a general rule. Staff hears from everybody. And I think anecdotally, without which we will go on a go forward basis, plowing through this the statistics. Gut feel the staff hear a lot more from people who are complaining about people parking on the street or whatever. So we'll back that up with facts, but we'll also look at somehow weaving in that wording around status quo or no change or whatever to give council a sense on that. So it's going to be a little bit of a tricky survey to do because you want to you want to get people's input, but at the same token, you have to have some parameters to work within, or we'll be more confused when we come back in the fall. But we can look at that for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashby.
Okay. First of all, I gotta commend your staff, Derek, because they do use a lot of discretion, and even particularly when they're responding to calls of vehicles parked in excess of 3 hours or whatever. I've seen personally on a number of occasions, they have actually gone to the house, knocked on the door, spoken to the resident or whoever's there, and warned them instead of just automatically handing out a ticket. So, as far as driveway construction, like, you guys are doing a good job, so I just wanted to say that. Now, I mentioned households that have too many vehicles and as a result park on the street. So for those households that if you're living in a house that has 2 garages and then parking on the front, on your front part there, do we have any concerns with these homeowners now renting out those spaces? And if we do, what would those concerns be? And is this part of, would this be something that we would encourage or mention as part of this study? So we might solve one problem over here, right? But for somebody who has available parking, is that something as a town we want to get involved with, or is that just the residents on their own?
Through the chair, I would suggest if residents want to come up with a friendly arrangement, the staff would not want to get involved in that type of arrangement. So, and probably neighbors do that. I know I do that in my own neighborhood where, if I, friends on the street or whatever, if I need some space and they're away, I, go and borrow half the driveway. So yeah, that's not something the town would officially, get into. Certainly as part of our good neighborhood strategy or a strong neighborhood strategy, we can talk about that. But, it's not something we would directly encourage people to do, because again, it kind of creates a liability perspective.
The reason why I asked that question is that in the city of Toronto, with the current housing situation, people are renting out rooms and so forth, and the city is talking about trying to regulate that, partly from a safety perspective and probably getting revenue from that as well too. So that's where that question came from in terms of whether or not that's something we want to encourage or get involved in.
Through the chair, it's not something, I don't think we want to encourage a driveway B and B or whatever, but, so
It might
residents
come.
amongst themselves, would like to do that, then that's just.
So it might come, so.
Yeah. No, that's a good point,
Okay.
so.
Can I just ask one question, since we seem to be going around? We're talking about encouraging apartments to go to 3 bedrooms. If the 3 bedrooms come with 3 cars, what does an apartment building do? You get, I think, 1 space as part of your rent, or do you have to pay per parking spot? It's been forever since I've been in an apartment building, so I'm just curious, like, you'd have to pay for all 3 spots?
You have to buy another spot.
Yes.
Let's say like a condo.
It's like
So
20
is it a
grand.
rental? So, okay. So I'm just trying to think of the fairness of that too, because that's what we're asking the town to do, is to start looking at 3 bedrooms or even 2 bedrooms would also come with 2 car spaces that resident would have to also pay for, right? Sorry, Councilor Drury.
Yeah, just one last question. When you design the survey, will you be looking at the areas that the responses came from? I guess my concern is the people who may need the on-street parking the most may not have the same ability because they're out of the community most of their day of responding, and those I'd like an indication of the area where the responses are coming. We can do that in a general way.
Yeah, I don't see any, again, if people are willing to provide us that information, absolutely, we can certainly ask for it. It's whether it's willing, people are willing to give us that, but that would certainly be helpful, absolutely, because interestingly enough, there's, we've gone through a lot of iterations on, the program or whatever, and it tends to be where, that's a key part of information to know, not only where tickets are being issued, but where it is. But that would be reasonable to ask, even if we break it down by neighborhood. We do have specific neighborhoods in our strong neighborhood strategy, so I think for consistency's sake, we would use that type of breakdown rather than inventing a new one, rather than being street specific. So we could certainly include the neighborhoods as we've identified them, you know, in our strong neighborhood strategy. Everybody understands, and I think everybody pretty much knows what neighborhood they're in. But we will make sure that we try and get that information.
If we can, because I mean, the issues are in townhouse areas.
Yeah.
And if we saw that we were getting all the responses from the larger single dwelling homes that have larger driveways and more, then I would have a real concern as to the validity of the.
Well, and that's a very valid point. But again, just through the chair, and the comment that Councilor Crawford made is, like this would allow people who live in apartments to have a big party to use the street as well too, because they're still residents, right? So it's not all just necessarily, because again, we all know apartments have generally limited number of you know, visitor spots as well too. So depending on where an apartment complex might be, if the visitors there's nothing, as long as you have a valid license plate or you got a license plate, you get 10 parks, you know, per year. So, and that will help the people that do have, you know, those multiple cars. So if you have, you know, 4 cars in your neighbor and only 2 spots, then at least you've got, you know, 40 spots, you know, 40 days you can have. But again, I want to be clear, like, this is never intended to design, nor will it ever resolve 5 vehicles and only 2 spots. You'll never resolve that one. So.
Okay, thank you. We need to move on, or we're ordering in dinner. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Okay, next is Westmead Millington Crescent Signal request. Hello there, how are you?
Very well. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is a follow-up report to the May 8th General Government Committee report, where staff were directed to look at a full range of options with regard to the potential for signalization at Westmead and Millington. Through the report, you'll see a number of options, including the potential for an extension of the median, examination of fully actuated or semi-actuated signals, as well as a timed mode for signalization, and a status quo option, which is staff's recommended option that remains unchanged since May 8th. We did reach out to regional staff as well to discuss the options to get a full understanding of what the potential cost implications would be. That is cited in the report, and staff are here to address any questions that committee may have.
Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report and looking into this further. Since the last meeting, I think many of us, I can't speak for all of us, but I think many of us have gone and tried to make that U-turn that was recommended in the last, and I'm yet to hear of anybody that was able to actually navigate it properly, and I think
my insurance doesn't cover that.
And Mr. Ford is here, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you might have tried it also, didn't you?
The person on the sidewalk was a little nervous when I tried it.
I can tell you, my F-150, I cannot make it, and trying to back up and make your way around. So that wasn't really a viable option. I'm glad to see this. I understand staff, because it doesn't meet the warrants, can't recommend it, but I think we can all agree where this needs to go. So I would, at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, like to move that this be moved to the long-range capital forecast consideration.
Any other questions? Councillor Brown?
Thank you. The actual cost is 305 plus 50 plus the 100, or is that total 305?
It's the 305.
Thank you. I did go up there, and I surprised one gentleman coming down Ravens Club when I made my U-turn.
Just one gentleman?
Did you wave? Did you wave?
But I was able to navigate it perfectly. I mean, he told me, you need to move out more and turn, so I did that, and it was fine. But I also sat on the street for a while and watched residents make a left at the intersection itself. And so I've not been there at rush hour. I was there at 1 o'clock today, so well, I might support this, but I don't know if I will at the end of the day, because I'd like to see what the impact is when the construction's finished. And because that's making for navigation, navigating that whole area, doubtful. Anyway, so while I'll support putting it into the forecast, I would like to have a further look at it in the 5 years, isn't it? I'll be here 5 years from now. I'd like to look at it before then because it shouldn't stay in the forecast that long, but have another look at it when all the construction's finished. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan?
And that's, I feel the same way. I'm somewhat concerned when the region says it's going to make this more unsafe. And am I correct in saying that? That's their comment, if we do any of these things?
Yes, it certainly does increase the risk for collisions.
So that concerns me when I don't want to put something in. I mean, the cost to me is irrelevant because if it would make it safer to install some kind of signals, I would definitely support it. But when the region is saying we would make it more unsafe, then I have some real concerns about going ahead and doing this. So if it goes through the long-range capital forecast, would we be doing more studies at that time? Because there's a lot of construction around there, and I think it gives a very different scenario. But also, when the construction's done, the traffic may increase. So if we put it in the forecast, I would want to be assured that further studies and analysis are done before we determine what should be done at this particular spot. Would that happen as routine, or should I add it on as an amendment?
Through the chair, I suspect that once the item is included as a budget item for the matter that is under consideration, that we would have to provide responses at that point in time to determine whether or not it's money well spent.
Well, maybe I'll just add it on then, that just a clause, an amendment to say with further review and analysis based on completed construction and increased traffic, whatever, if someone would want to put the proper wording, because I think it's important that we really look at this carefully and not make the situation more unsafe, because there are, I mean, I know that there are other places in the region where you want to do a left turn, but I as a driver think, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go up further and find a safer spot. I know someone told me that all they ever do was make right turns to get to wherever they want. I thought that was a pretty good idea, but it would slow you down significantly. So anyway, I think we need to look at this further, but include it in there so that if we do decide to go ahead, we do.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's important what you're talking about with construction, because I think that right now West Indian 2 is the black hole of Ajax, and so everybody is avoiding it like crazy. So, you know, it's probably not a true reflection of the traffic flow in there right now. Although rush hour, I would argue that doesn't matter what's going on, it's still busy in there. But anyway, I think that's a really good point. I'm sorry, Director Sheila.
Don't strain yourself.
Right, straight.
So through the chair, just to mention to council, on our budget, long-range capital budget process, there'll be a few considerations with this project moving in. One of them, of course, is our spending caps. So the projects right now in our 5 years fill up that cap, so there may be movement of projects likely that are currently in the long range, unless it tacks on to the end. And the other thing is we don't typically like to put a place marker in if we're going to do further studies and further information on it. So what we will do, depending on council's direction today, we will make the consideration and put in the budget as you direct.
Okay, so I believe that your addition is a friendly amendment to Sean already moving that, so we're okay with that?
I assume there would be further looking into it as well, so yeah.
Okay. So you moved it, then, all in favor?
So what exactly what was moved here?
Okay, do you want to
This
put-
is being referred to
Yes.
consideration for long-range capital forecast.
Yeah, Nicole will read the amendment.
So I have that signalization of this intersection be added into the long-range capital forecast, but that continued studies occur between now and then to see how completed construction and changing traffic volumes might impact the feasibility or desirability of signalization.
Wordsmith. You're a wordsmith.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Maybe not what I said, but it's what I meant.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Next is the Ajax Auto Wreckers request to amend minutes of settlement.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the town is in receipt of a request from Ajax Auto Wreckers to amend minutes of settlement that were established through court proceedings associated with the town and Ajax Auto Wreckers relocation from 147 West New Road South to its current location at 140 and 160 Dottie Road back in 2001. The staff report recommends that council not endorse the proposal to amend the minutes of settlement. The proposal presents significant compatibility concerns between the subject lands and its surroundings, which is not in keeping with the intent that formed the basis of the minutes of settlement. The proponent is in attendance and would like to address council, and the staff is here to answer any questions you may have.
So I'm asking that we suspend the rules and allow Mr. Monahan and his consultant to come forward. Is that good? Motion?
I'll move.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Some questions. I read it quickly.
Hi, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John McDermott. I'm a registered professional planner in the province of Ontario, and I represent Mr. Monahan in these matters. Here is a solicitor, and Mr. Monahan is here as well today. I think I don't want to get into the details of the history of the whole thing, other than to say how we got to this point, which I think is a factor that hasn't been properly put forward in the staff report. Some time ago, I believe during 2015 or late 2014, Mr. Monahan his business was charged due to the stockpiling, the high stockpiling of materials on site. And as a result of that, our client undertook to meet with staff of the town of Ajax, and the request was made of him to respond to a series of questions relating to changes in his business operations since the minutes of settlement were entered into. That was something that we looked at, and we looked at how we would resolve this issue. And so through a minor variance application that was quite comprehensive, we filed the application last summer with the town of Ajax, and we responded to the questions that were raised by Mr. Mueller in his memorandum to my client as part of this document. We filed that, and it was sent back to us. It never went to committee of adjustment. We were refused that opportunity, which in discussions with our lawyers, they were quite surprised, because the minutes of settlement clearly stated the conclusion that once all those conditions had been fulfilled, that they're deemed to be fulfilled in their entirety, and that both parties mutually covenant and agree to release one another from any further action. So the lawyers representing our client take the opinion that, or hold the opinion, and I'm not a lawyer obviously, but they hold the opinion that once the client satisfied the minutes of settlement, that issue was resolved and life moves forward. So we filed the application for a minor variance in the context of any other person in the municipality who required relief from the zoning bylaw in order to deal with, in part, the charges that had been laid. That's the first step. So we filed the application, and then we were told, you're not going to the committee of adjustment, we're not going to allow you to go there, which I found puzzling, to say the least. I thought that was very, pardon me for saying it, autocratic, in the sense that if we had any other citizen in the community, we would be allowed to at least present our case to the Committee on Adjustment, but we refused that opportunity. And subsequent to that, we received a letter from, or an email, I received emails from the town staff requesting that we write to council and ask for an amendment to the municipal settlement, notwithstanding that the solicitors have said they didn't consider it necessary. So, in an effort to be responsible and move this matter forward and to come to hopefully a mutually acceptable conclusion of matters, we wrote to council asking for direction on this matter. Now, having said that, we received this report, I reviewed the report, and I've looked at it, and from a planning perspective, I've looked at the designations in your official plan, I've looked at the zoning, I've looked at the future downtown area that you've designated. Under the growth plan, these lands will remain employment. You'd have to remove them by virtue of a 5-year comprehensive review. So it's highly unlikely they're going to come out of an employment classification. And our client is attempting to operate what I would call as a green business. And I'd like to discuss that just for a moment in the sense that basically what's happened here is that over the years it's moved from an auto records operation, which was very well defined, to a salvage yard recycling type of operation today, whereby various products, including automobiles, are recycled at this location. And so it is a green-oriented activity. It may not be the cleanest business in town, clearly, but if you've been to the site, I've walked around in the yard in my dress shoes and left and had no dirt on my shoes. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing in terms of perhaps the visual aspects of it when you're on site due to the heavy equipment, due to the nature of the operations that break down the product. But when it's packaged up and ready to leave, it's very orderly, very tidy. So the problem that has occurred in the sense of a change in business operations over the years through recycling and the reuse initiatives, working in Ajax all these years, I know that this municipality has always been very environmentally oriented in terms of moving forward. And I think that this business is very much a complement of those activities. It may not be the greenest business in the sense of the visual side of it, but it is a very green industry in the context of recycling, reuse, reduction, and energy efficiency. And just on that note, I don't really know this, but recycled metals, when they're recycled and put back in the system, it takes 70% less energy to reproduce a product using those than it does to go through the whole experience of extraction, mining, and creating metals. So when you can see a distinct benefit to our society as a whole, whereby we reduce energy costs by 70%, I find it difficult to penalize an industry such as my clients, which is very much oriented to achieving many environmental objectives which are very desirable. So we're here today. I've looked at the report. I understand that High Street's going to be extended. I understand that there are properties in between. I looked at the pictures of the report. The one picture from where Hunt Street is doesn't even, the fence that we're talking about, that we require the relief for, would screen any objectionable stockpile in that area. In fact, we prepared very detailed site plans to show where the fence would be proposed that would be higher than is permissible under the current bylaw. So that was the first aspect, was to increase the fence level from 2.8, I believe it is, to 3.66 meters. And there are other screening mechanisms in the town and elsewhere that are that high. We see them often along residential areas next to major roads. There's a fence right across the street here that would be comparable. So what my client did was he put in the 12-foot steel posts, I-beam posts, similar to what's right up at this on Achilles here. He put those in and he put the fence to 8 feet and was seeking relief to fill it in to 12, to create the screen, the visual screen. That would be for the stockpiling areas where the derelict motor vehicles are brought to the site. They would be stockpiled there. They would be stockpiled to a height below the fence. and prior to going into the shop to be decommissioned. And then there was the issue of the stockpiling, and he has built concrete barriers around specific areas, so it's a very well-defined operation. It has to be due to the separation of materials. And in an effort to bring some greater order to this, we demonstrated those areas on the site plans that we filed with the application. So having said all that, we're here today because we want to be responsible. We want to resolve these issues to the satisfaction of both the municipality and the client. We are in a situation where the adjoining properties are employment uses. We're not in a residential area. We're in an area that's recognized under the regional plan as an employment area. We're in an area that's recognized under the Ajax plan as an employment area, albeit with performance policy issues that we're here to address. So in the first blush, to summarize, contrary to perhaps the opinions expressed by your municipal solicitors or whomever, there is this issue that once these minutes of settlement were complied with, which we believe they were, why our client is thwarted in terms of at least making an application and trying to resolve this positively. And if we have to amend the minutes of settlement, if that is the direction of council, then let's talk about it, let's resolve it, let's have a mutually positive discussion as opposed to just saying, no, this isn't going to happen. There's issues here, and this business employs 20 some odd people. It's a benefit overall to society. It's a benefit to the town of Ajax in as much as it's part of a recycling initiative. It's in an employment area, and when I drive around the area and I see the concrete silos stacked on the property next door, if that ever came to be, these height limitations that we're talking about would be modest by comparison. I look at the skids piled on the street up on the corner, and I say to myself, here we have a situation where we're trying to be responsible and trying to resolve things, and we're being thwarted. And so we're looking for opportunity to open this dialogue and do something positive that's in everybody's best interest, as well as my client, in an effort to allow his business to be a green business, to allow it to be more recycling oriented.
Okay, I think we have some questions, so thank you for your presentation. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott, for your comments. And first of all, I'd like to get a legal, maybe some legal thoughts, specifically in regards to Mr. McDermott is saying that his clients meets these minutes of settlements. That the town's position is that they don't. And then just in terms of process, in order to move forward with a C of A application, it's this council that has to amend these minutes. Is that my understanding? Am I correct in that?
In order for the application to go forward, yes, the minutes would have to be amended.
Okay.
Your understanding in that regard is correct.
Okay, and just in terms of this discrepancy in terms of compliance and non-compliance with the minutes of settlement, do you have any thoughts you want to share with us?
Only that I think our opinion differs with the opinion that Ajax Auto Records has received. Our position is that it's not a matter of the conditions being fulfilled. This is in the larger context of the court proceeding that was going on at the time. All of the items in the minutes were all important and they were all critical. And they're all going to be there for as long as time continues unless council is prepared to amend them and change them for whatever reason.
Okay, and if council elects today not to amend the minutes of settlement, what's the next step? Like what happens after this?
I suspect we'll probably try again to file the application. If it's denied, I suspect it will end up in divisional court, judicial review application, or proceeding of a similar nature.
Okay, so despite what council says today, tomorrow they could still, if it's not favorable to the to the applicant, they could still submit their CFA application, or?
There are legal remedies open to them if they want to
Okay.
continue to try to push ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Parrish.
Well, that was the question I was getting to. I'm just curious, Mr. McDermott, that you got this advice from your solicitor that these are minutes of settlement, they've been completed, it's been incorporated into a zoning provision according to the minutes of settlement. Why didn't your lawyer simply advise you that, you know, you have the right to file a minor variance, or if a minor variance wasn't appropriate because the variance was too great, a rezoning, and just go about doing that? Because if the town refused to accept it, you had a remedy. I mean, you had a remedy to go to court and say, this municipality is improperly refusing to accept this, and if the legal advice you got was correct, that opinion would be upheld by the court. You'd file your committee of adjustment application. Committee of adjustment received the application, received input from a number of outside bodies, including the town. The town's comments may well be exactly what they are in this report. And the Committee of Adjustment would make its decision, and if you were not satisfied with the decision, you'd have appeal rights to the Ontario Municipal Board. So all this leaves me, if you had this advice, it leaves me curious as to why you didn't just take the advice of your legal counsel.
Through you, Madam Chair, that was exactly what the lawyer said. And the reason was very simple, I think, from my client's perspective, was costs. He felt, and he's right here, he felt that he would prefer, rather than end up in divisional court over this matter, that he would rather work with the town of Ajax and come to a mutually acceptable decision. That's the bottom. That was the bottom line.
Okay, that's an acceptable one. So it seems to me that your client, in good faith, entered into minutes of settlement some 15 years ago on the basis of conducting their business in a modified form in a new location according to agreed site-specific fencing, aesthetics, containment, visually and otherwise, from the surrounding area. And the town, I presume in good faith, came to that agreement as well. Things change, I understand that, but what was not reasonably foreseeable here, and how can you square that with a use that is generally seen as green as it may be in the context, there's no dispute as to the legitimacy of a metal recycling business, an auto wrecker, whatever the various terms are. But how do you square the fact that it's a use that by its very nature is that kind of the edge of compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, and what is sought here is basically, I think, fairly seen as making it less compatible with the surrounding neighborhood? How do you square that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I agree with everything Mayor Parrish has said, with one exception. And that is that what my client's trying to do, two things. First of all, you've made the point that businesses change. And that's exactly what's happened here. As he's moved more to a recycling operation, this business is based on margins, and the product comes in and it goes out, and he processes it. And so by way of explanation here, the markets dictate shipping off-site. The product's always coming to the site, and he takes it in, and he has to stockpile it until one of the refineries or other businesses that he sells to, like Gardeau out in Whitby, they will want so many tons of material, and they want it at a specified time. So he stockpiles on site to allow him to meet market demands of the persons and the companies he sells to.
So can I just stop you there? Can I stop you there? So this is a stockpiling issue and a time of delivery issue. And if the time of delivery was kind of a constant thing, the stockpiling wouldn't be an issue. But it's a demand kind of thing, and until that demand comes, the stockpiling has to happen, then it can be shipped off.
If the stockpile builds up, and then they go down.
So just in terms, I mean, there's a number of uses I take it that go on this site. Some of it's very active in terms of compacting, scrapping, separating, and one of them is stockpiling. So is it fair to say that the stockpiling solution could be dealt with elsewhere? If this is simply a stockpiling issue?
No. With you, Madam Chairman, no, it's not feasible to the handling of materials is time consuming, requires heavy equipment. It's not something you could ship off site and bring it back when it's required. No, that's not a solution to this problem. And going back to your other point, Mayor Parrish, was the issue of compatibility. And if you look at what he was proposing in terms of the fence, yes, it would be 12 foot high or the 3.66 meters, but that would give a visual impairment from a motor vehicle on Hunt Street or from other properties. Even if you had a direct line of sight to the fence, you would not see any product stockpiled above it in that area.
Is that the request 12 feet?
Pardon me?
Is that the request 12 feet?
3.66 meters.
So, from your experience as a planning consultant, an advisor on planning matters of long standing, would you consider a variance from 7.5 meters, 7.5 feet, I'm sorry, to 12 feet in the purview of a minor variance as opposed to something that you and probably a lawyer experienced in these types of matters would say, I think you're over the minor variance line, I think you need a rezoning?
Well, through the chair, minor is a relative term, as you know, from both a quantitative and qualitative perspective. And if you had the privilege of reading the documentation that we filed here, you would see that we did address the 4 tests under the Planning Act in terms of being minor, appropriate, desirable, and in keeping with the intent. There's no question that there's a relief required here. The Committee of Adjustment could have denied it, but from a planning perspective, we believe that we put forward a reasonable.
I'm just talking in terms of process. In my experience, if you're in a realm where you give the Committee of Adjustment a pretty easy bunt to say, we don't believe this is minor in nature, you're really maybe spinning your wheels instead of just going and filing rezoning, getting a disposition from the council, which you anticipate may not be favorable, but then you're off to the Ontario Municipal Board and you put your report in front of them and then they say what they say.
If this council were to direct my client to apply for an amendment to the zoning bylaw, which was not part of the pre-discussions, this all occurred, I came in after the fact at that point, so I sort of picked up where the previous planner left off. I'm not excusing that, I'm just saying the direction was to apply for a minor variance. But if this council felt that, given the nature of the business, if there was an opportunity to go through a zoning bylaw amendment and resolve this to your satisfaction.
Well, I think that the point that in my first question that you said quite candidly as to why this other route wasn't taken, you said cost. And that's a legitimate answer, and I'm sure it has validity. But it seems to me the cost of a divisional court application for a mandamus or certiorari or whatever the heck it's called, and then the court saying to the Committee of Adjustment, accept this application, and then you file the application, and then it's turned down by the Committee of Adjustment on the basis that it's really not within their purview, it's not minor. You can save a heck of a lot of costs, it seems to me, by cutting out that one, which to me would be probably the much more costly portion of the process, especially when you get into court, than to just, you know.
Madam Chair, through you, again, had we had this discussion prior to all of the history that's gone on here, I'm fairly confident in saying to you that if there was sense that this could proceed in that manner, that process would have been followed, because I can't disagree with anything you've said in relation to the cost issue, because this is skyrocketing. So the council directed, said, okay, we believe that an opportunity exists to work together here, and we can amend the minutes of settlement if that's necessary, and deal with it. And one of the conditions would be to go through a rezoning of the property. Then I think that we would see our way through a positive resolution.
Well, I just see the issue of amending the minutes of settlement is that, like, this is like prime territory for two lawyers to disagree. I mean, Mr. Merker has given his opinion,
yeah,
which I see as having validity. You've got a different opinion, which I see as having some validity. And I mean, so if both of those opinions have some legitimacy, it's basically time to take it outside of that and start a different process. Because as far as I'm concerned, minutes of settlement can't be amended except by the agreement of the parties. And if one of the parties says no, it's over. But I don't understand that this ultimate course to be that simple, right?
I can't disagree with you, sir.
Thank you.
That's why we're here.
Thank you.
Councilor Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Most of my questions are to staff, actually, not the delegation.
Okay.
Did you want questions just to the delegation?
Is there any other questions to the delegation? If not, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
That's my first question will be to Mr. Miller, not Mr. Merker. So thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Merker. Cam, just minutes of settlement. So I understand this correctly. The Committee of Adjustment doesn't have the authority to change the legally binding agreement.
Correct.
Okay. And the agreements between the town of Ajax and Ajax Auto Wreckers, or whichever of the companies, if Ajax Auto Wreckers sold to another party, would the minutes of settlement still be in place?
No, our position would be those minutes run with the land.
With the land use, okay, okay, that's a big piece. One of the things the delegation said was, and this may be switching over to Mr. Mueller or Bruno, sorry Bruno. They said they put up concrete barriers inside. Like, I'm trying to understand, okay, we're talking about a fence height. If you put a building there, and the building was, I don't know that we have restrictions on the height of the building, would there be restrictions on the height of the building?
No.
Okay, so if they built a building there and this was inside, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That's a yes.
Possibly not. That's a
That's
good
a yes.
question. That's
Okay.
a good question. I have to think
So
about
I'm
it.
just trying to understand the logic behind just taking a fence that's already 8 feet, making it 12 feet, because to me, I don't want to look at cars piled up, and I don't think anybody else does. If they're allowed to take a truck and park it right next to the fence, that's allowed, but that would be a lot higher than 8 feet. Right? That would block the
Sounds
view.
great. Yep.
A building would block the view. Placing those big concrete blocks on top of each other, which is also allowed, would block the view. So this is semantics as far as I'm... Pardon me? Yeah, I get the process, but I also get that I can see that the business has changed, and I also... I see the need to have the business because I've been by there many times whenever you got metal or something, and I don't see a lot of cars. I see it mostly as a recycling thing now. I'm just trying to, it's like a catch-22 here, and it's hard, and I'm just trying to figure out how we can get around it, because if Mr. Monahan was here saying, I want to just build a building, it would be more cost to build a building, but again, it would get to the end result that they want. So how can we get to the end result here today? Just because the planning says, and the minutes of settlement 15 years ago were agreed to, things have changed. So how can we change with them?
Well, maybe to perhaps set the context a little bit in relation to minutes of settlement and the rationale for the height of the fence. The intent was, and part and parcel of the the approach with regard to allowing for the use on the property was to enable its relocation from Weston Road. And at the time, the operation of Weston Road was the subject of a number of municipal concerns and operational issues. So the change in the use on this property was agreed to, and there was a land transaction associated with
Based on
that.
the minutes of site.
That's correct. And those preconditions were also on the understanding that there would be controls on the property. And the way those controls were articulated was through the height of the pile and the height of the fence, so that it doesn't become something that is, unmanageable or something that was not viewed as either an eyesore or municipal concern that way. So the two issues really go together. An agreement on the location of the use was tied to the intensity of the use, and that was tied to the height of the fence and the height of the pile, so that it was all dealt with sort of on the same playing field. So I think it'd be difficult to sort of parse one issue out from the other. Would the town have agreed to the use on this property if it knew that the height of the fence would go up by X and the pile would go up by another number as well? So I think that's the understanding that the minutes of settlement try to get.
Okay, but again, 15 years ago, I don't know that I was, just not here, but I wasn't here then. I don't know that we would have been thinking that Hunt Street was going to go all the way through at that point. I don't think we would have been thinking a lot of different things.
That's true.
So it's changed. Are there any examples in Ajax, because this minutes of settlement thing is a one-off as far as this particular thing, I believe. Are there any examples in Ajax where we have employment lands that have a fence higher than 8 feet?
I would have to look into it.
Well, if you go, and I've been to this site and look around, you'll see like those skyjack things, those lifts are sticking way up 30 feet in the air. There's pallets stacked up way over here. There's a lot of other things that are a lot higher than the 8-foot fence that nobody's complaining about. But since there's minutes of settlement on this one triangular piece in the middle, they're kind of stuck, but the other ones are able to operate.
Well, in terms of the other uses, I mean, they do have the benefit of being long-time operators. They've been there for a number of years. The pallet manufacturer, I don't know how long they've been there, but certainly a very long time. Certainly Dwight Crane has been there for many years as well, and it predates our current zoning bylaw, from what I understand. So they do have the right to continue those uses under whatever permissions they were granted at the time.
Okay.
So
I guess
it's good.
what's stopping the proponent from taking a bunch of trucks and parking them all the full length across the 8-foot thing and just operating their business behind? Nothing, right?
It would depend on where on the site it is.
Okay,
in
but
terms of what it would actually fit.
my point, which would be better? Raising the fence up a little bit and having it look cosmetically good, or some sort of jerry-rig kind of thing to make it work out?
Well, I think the standard of design for employment areas would say neither of those options are particularly good ones.
No.
And we would try to seek a better.
Like, I don't want to
standard
see
for
shipping
employment areas.
containers stacked up. I don't want to see any of this stuff stacked up to try and form a block.
Right.
Right? I would much rather take the simple route and just say, let's make the fence a little bit higher and be done. So, okay, well, those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Councilor Dias.
Thank you. So, I know we're saying here that the business has changed over the years, and I get that. But if I look, on page 98, there's, back in 2013, so this agreement was what? 2001? The settlement was in 2001? So in 2013, we already have a complaint about stacking above the limit. And it goes back and forth all until basically 2017, April 2017. So if this, and I know these businesses are being pushed out of communities, and there's a compatibility issue, and there's compatibility issue going into the future. So what would be the best case scenario if this business owner wants to be able to operate without issues? Would it be to put the building in, or is it just a canopy we're looking at? Or can they function that way?
That is a possibility if I look at, for example, the Index Energy facility. There is a storage area that is completely enclosed by a building. And that is where the would fuel the storage for that particular facility. That is an option that has been employed in Ajax. In terms of other options, I'm not aware of any.
But the stacking's been an issue since day one, pretty much. Back and forth stacking fences.
At least in terms of the dates that are shown in the staff report, but if it was a concern prior to that date, I'm not aware of it.
Thank you.
Councilor Jordan?
Yes, I just wondered if you could elaborate a little. If we support the staff recommendation, then Mayor Parrish raised some of the options for the owner. The zoning bylaw amendment would be based on a change of use? Or what, like, I wonder if you could just speak to some of that and...
Well, we see the minutes of settlement, excuse me, as a precondition. It's a binding legal agreement between the municipality and the operator, and that we view as a matter that would need to be resolved in the first instance. The reason we're before committee today is because this agreement was an important element behind the municipal decision to enable the relocation of the use to the property, and that we believe is a matter that would need to be addressed in the first instance before we get into whether it's a Canadian adjustment or a rezoning. And if it's a rezoning, there are also official plan policies that also speak to the height of the fence and the height of the pile as well. So those are two potential approaches should the first issue be dealt with.
So meaning what we have before us today.
That's correct.
And then there's other options that the owner could explore, and we would be looking at those as well.
That's correct. And in terms of the minutes of settlement, I would imagine that would go into the court system and can speak to that.
I didn't hear the last bit up there.
Sorry.
We're getting older. The ears don't work as well.
It's not because we're getting older.
Oh, is it? What is it?
No, it's just wax in our ears.
Oh, okay.
In terms of whether there is a court element associated with that, when that happens in the process, I think Cam is better equipped to answer those questions.
And I mean, as well, if there's anything we need to go into in camera, I would appreciate the staff or our lawyer advising us that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really primarily, I think this is a planning question. I mean, from the legal aspect of it in the minutes of settlement, in order for a minor variance to be granted or for a zoning change application to go forward, I think the minutes are still something that need to be addressed up front. And, all of the issues, recognizing that the nature of the business has changed over time and times change and whatnot, if council is of the view that what Ajax Auto Records is seeking is a good thing and something that you would entertain, then I think this is part of that process, and moving in that direction, agreeing to amend the minutes would have to be part and parcel of that process. But I think this is primarily more a planning question about whether what Ajax Auto Records is seeking, whether it's a good thing and it makes sense and something that you support, or otherwise.
Okay, I think I'm following this. So by turning this down, or approving the staff recommendation, then it would be likely go through some sort of public process, because right now, I don't know whether it's a good or bad thing or whatever. I mean, I would want it to go through a process plan and whatever to tell me more information and what neighboring businesses or properties, their opinion on it. I think that's, am I getting to what, is that kind of
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of, should council endorse staff's recommendation, there's certainly nothing stopping the applicant from filing their applications, but I think there's what staff's position is on it and what the municipality's position is generally with regard to the fourth proposal, and I think it gives an understanding of which route it would take.
Okay, well, I'll move the staff.
I believe that Mr. Parrish has something to add to this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move the staff recommendation as number 1, but I would add to the staff recommendation number 2 as follows: that staff be directed to investigate other processes and design details that may address the town's compatibility concerns. So basically, what I'm saying is that I understand the staff's recommendation. I think the recommendation is appropriate in terms of compatibility issues. I think that a number of members of council have raised the concern that there may be other avenues and other ways to address the needs of this proponent and the needs of the town, and that they should be explored. And that's basically what the motion is seeking.
To that amendment, Councilor Rowan?
Well, I'm going to support that, but I have a question. Mr. McDermott made a point, why wasn't the committee, why wasn't it processed from, the minor variance process through the community adjustment? Why did that not happen?
Certainly as part of, because this was substantive to the minutes of settlement that were endorsed by council, we needed to get direction by council as to whether or not the municipality would support such a change, since it was central to would be central to the application. To go to committee of adjustment without council having a full understanding of what the issue was, and that it was not in keeping with the approved minutes of settlement, would have represented an issue. So it's best to come to council first, get direction, and provide an understanding.
So why did it come to council?
We are at this committee today to discuss the issue.
So many years later.
This is it.
Oh, that's laughable, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Jordan. Oh, no, sorry, Councilor Collier first.
I just wonder time frame, please.
I didn't address time frame. I imagine that my feeling is that this will stimulate further thought, discussions, et cetera, et cetera. At one point, there might be some kind of meeting of the minds, and at one point, one of the parties will say, there's not going to be any meeting of the minds, I'm going elsewhere. So I wouldn't want to put in an artificial
well, just the reason I ask, because the matter is coming towards, I think the court date's August. So,
is there a court date fixed for August?
Yeah, there's been an adjournment to August. The last bullet in the page 90.
Through the chair, the matter's been adjourned for the last 2 years, so if we keep getting adjourned.
Well, that's okay. As long as we're all in agreement.
All right.
Well,
okay,
so
I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, I'm sorry.
Should that form part of the amendment, that until that our staff agree to sort of hold that until staff comes back to us? That's all.
I think that just follows. I mean, I wouldn't want to. I mean, I know the difficulty with court dates, and Mr. Hannon might be forced to have to finally have something that he can do something with. I'm sure that in light of this motion, that there wouldn't be anything substantive done until council was appraised of the situation. Am I right in thinking that?
Through the chair, correct. It's been the applicant coming in and asking for the adjournment, so the town's at no disadvantage by agreeing to, or not objecting to those.
Thank you.
Any, Councilor Jordan?
I just wanted to reread that again, just so I'm really clear.
Number 2 states that staff be directed to investigate other processes and design details that may address the town's compatibility concerns.
So we're upholding the staff recommendation.
Number 1, and this is a number 2 added to it.
And then that will be, I just want to speak to ask staff, because I want to be really clear. So that will, second piece, is that the part where you will get into looking at zoning bylaw amendment or?
It would be a full range of potential
So it could be
design and
those.
process issues.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So that's,
Did you want to add, Steve, like i.e. rezoning or C of A? Or,
No, I deliberately used the word processes so that it would take in all of those various there's a number of options out there, and some of them might have pros and cons, and some will be different. And I think staff is knowledgeable enough to know. And I think, let's be fair. I mean, there's a cost aspect to the town and to the applicant in terms of which one is the best to deal with. I think everybody should want the process that cuts to the chase and doesn't pour people's money out of their pockets unnecessarily. I mean, I take that as a given.
So we have an amendment to the motion.
Let's vote.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Would I be out of
And
line
then
moving
now
10
to
minute
the-
break, Council?
What's that? Yeah, a motion as amended. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd be lost without it. And I think we need a break.
Well, I'd be willing to move a 10-minute break.
Would you like a break? Yeah.
Let's debate that.
Yes, let's debate that for 10 minutes.
And then,
Did we vote?
we have form here, right?
Do we have quorum? No, we do.
Nobody moves.
Through the chair, for the last couple of months at least, we've had some concerns with rising water levels in Lake Ontario to the point of record levels. Those high water levels in combination with heavy precipitation, high winds, have resulted in considerable and significant erosion along the Ajax shoreline. In a few sections of the shoreline where the trail is close to the top of bluff, there's actually been a couple of failures of the trail system. So there's actually 2 sections of the Ajax waterfront trail that are currently permanently closed because of major erosion at those points of the bluff.
You know, this is all Jade's fault, right?
Yeah.
The last GGC meeting, she talked about rain, and then it never stopped.
So there's also one section of trail which is fenced between the top of bluff and the trail itself, which is causing a dangerous situation. So we've got a couple of things to factor in. One is, and first and foremost, is public safety. And also the fact that we've got a couple of sections of the trail, which is an extremely feature in the town. A couple of sections of the trail that are really closed, and we need to find a way around those sections of trail. I've just brought, for discussion purposes, about this presentation, which just shows some images of where those sections of trail are located, which have been affected by the erosion of the shoreline. The star to the left is to the west of the Love Crescent parking lot. The star to the right is to the east of the Love Crescent parking lot. And the star to the far right is at the intersection of Lake Driveway East and McFarland Road at the Woodlot. So the section of trail to the west of Love Crescent parking lot is the section that has been fenced off between the trail and the top of bluff. So it is technically still open, but it's dangerously close to being closed. The other 2 sections, east of Love and over at McFarland, have now been permanently closed. So we, staff have been out on site on many occasions. We've looked at this with the TRC involvement. The report we have before you today is an emergency replacement report. Our strategy is to hire a contractor to create new and permanent trails, which would be rerouted, realigned many, many meters north of the top of Bank,
I've got a couple of images here. This is the trail, the new alignment west of the Love Crescent parking lot. So we would connect at either end to the existing waterfront trail, push the new trail, new section of trail within a manicured green lawn space, which is the photo to the bottom right, and make a brand new connection of trail, which would be a reroute around the section of trail that's been fenced. A little further to the east on the other side of the Love Crescent parking lot, we have a trail section. The photo to the left shows just before it was actually completely undermined. So there's now actually a large crater where that trail used to be. So the idea here, the strategy, is to create a brand new section of trail which goes to the north side of that woodlot on the bottom right, which is between the woodlot and the pumping station. There's a natural desire line through there. That photo is taken approximately where the brand new trail would be aligned. It would come out again on the east side and connect to the existing trail, placing the new alignment 30 or 40 meters to the north of the existing trail. And the last slide that I have is the failed trail at the woodlot at McLarnon. We've walked this, and the most logical solution to this, to reopen the waterfront trail at this section, is to route the new trail around the woodlot, connecting it to the east and west of the existing trail, creating a potential trailhead at the casual parking lot at McLarnon for future. And this would then create a new trail. The bottom right photo shows approximately where that trail would go. There's plenty of real estate to see that achieved. That's the strategy. It's open for discussion.
Wow, Mother Nature's not happy here. That is crazy. I have Councilor Dyes.
So, all right, so we know this is climate change, we're living it here, and the indicators are that it's going to become more frequent, intense rains and wind. And that was the cause of undermining the bluff area in particular. So, you know, we had that first storm where we lost, I don't know how many feet? 8 feet, and the second storm came and undercut that whole trail. How many feet we lost in total? No? It's quite a bit. So, and you've spoken with TRCA about where we go in the future. And I'd like to know where we go, because I still look at the trail and I see there are parts of the trail that are still very close to the top that could be undermined in the future in another storm. So we need to look at those points where it's very narrow. And we need to, I guess it would help me understand how I can justify putting a new trail in, a fully new paved trail with, as opposed to limestone or something, until we know exactly how we're going to protect those bluffs. So that would be a TRCA jurisdiction. I don't know what they're planning for that.
Staff have been directed to look at the Twin Waterfront Trail in the coming months, to look at opportunities where we can provide additional trail, and also look at the existing trail. We do have issues, like you mentioned, there are issues in other areas where the trail is getting close to the top of bluff. We will take a look at all of those options at that time over the course of the coming months, working with such agencies as the TRCA to get their feedback and input as well. Because we know that there are issues at Rotary Park, for example, where they continually have washouts. So we will look at where trails need to be realigned, replaced, and how would that fit into any future additional trail development, where we have real estate, where there are very active zones, and where there are more passive zones.
So just to follow up for you, are they looking at doing buffers in the lake that somehow prevent that way back from the road?
At this point, we're not at that point.
Will they look at that, how they can prevent that? Because that was discussion years ago on that. everybody's knocking on the door because we've all had issues. I mean, we were lucky, really. So then, all right, do you see this a start? I guess we have to connect the trailers. And I foresee there will be other connections. Will we be able to accommodate that, or will there be big pieces that we're going to have to readjust, even though we've readjusted?
So through the chair, right now we're looking at it as an emergency measure to maintain this waterfront trail to be open for the public. We're looking at creating trail sections where there are multi-use, where various uses can be used along a 3-meter wide asphalt trail as opposed to a gravel trail. We will look in the future at other opportunities and other areas where we need to realign the trail, and we'll work with other agencies on that.
Thank you. Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've walked on these trails my whole life. I've never seen anything like this. The McLaren one doesn't look like it's that close to the bank.
Oh, it is.
How far is it? Well, from the picture. I don't know if the picture
I tell you, I've been by there a couple of times. I was by there when the first undermining happened and some trees started going down. And then it was virtually the next day. It's when I did the ride with town staff, and the cut is now right to that side of the, and the next iteration is going to be what we saw at the east of Love Crescent. It's going to undermine it, and you're going to have to cut it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure most members of council can remember when we used to have all those concrete pipes there, and
Medco pipes.
I don't know if we removed those, but I mean, I'm sure they served a purpose, and that's to prevent some of the erosion. Is there anything that we can do? And if there is, I'm sure I don't want to know the price of it, but is there anything we can do to prevent the erosion? Because I don't want to be back here in 10 years. Well, I won't be, but I don't want to see the council back here in 10 years saying, you know, it's eroded to the point where we've got to do this again. So is there anything we can do to the banks to preserve what's there? I don't think we want to, although those pipes were fun to crawl through when we were little, I don't know if that's the solution, but is there one?
Through the chair, we have had some very preliminary discussions with members of the GRC that ask about that. It's a very difficult, some of the solutions are very difficult because if you try to provide barriers along one section of the bank, it will affect other sections of the bank and it'll start to undermine. One of the reasons why the trail at Love Crescent was completely undermined and disappeared essentially was because there was a stone outcrop there which created different types of currents which undermined in one specific location. So if you were to put, for example, rock boulders as protection against that, you'd almost have to do it along the entire length of waterfront and stretching into other municipalities. So yes, there's probably discussions that we have with the GRCA to see what could be done in terms of perhaps vegetation or other things, but that's a little bit more of a longer term discussion.
Will you be coming back with some sort of solution like that or proposal, or is this...
I believe that the intent is to come back to council with additional information.
Okay. Well, I agree this has to be done. Thank you.
Mayor Parrish.
Yeah, I think both councillors have raised the points. I will move this. I totally support this. You know, the trail is so important to the whole identity of the Ajax waterfront, and we have to reestablish it as quickly as we can. And I'm glad this report has come so quickly, and I'm glad we're doing it as quickly as possible through the next. I take it will be completed by the end of August. Did you say?
Over the summer.
And I think the second thing is that, you know, we have an issue that is not going away. I mean, I've been here for a long time, and I've seen occasionally where the bank becomes undermined, and it's usually coincidental with very high water levels where the barrier of the cobbled beach is no longer there, and the waves are washing right up at the bottom of the bluff, and the undermining is very rapid and very considerable. And anybody's been down the lake the last while has seen brown water way out into the lake, where traditionally that's only at the creek mouth after a rain event, but it's like and it's just all this erosion that's taking place. But I do agree that we have to develop a long-term strategy to stabilize the bank and to preserve the waterfront, because we're looking out 20, 50, 75, 100 years and having no waterfront left. And that's not an option. We work too hard on this. And I look at, when I go out on the GO train, I look at the erosion control measures that they have out in the area of Rouge, Ghost Station, et cetera, and I think that short-term, medium-term, and long-term bank stabilization has to be developed. Part of the short-term stuff might be some kind of planned plantings on appropriate bluffs that could help hold the bluff with a root system, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe some of them is just putting some stone or gabions or things. But I think longer term, we have to have something that's going to control the big erosion events in high water times and significant rain events. And I don't know the cost of those, but I think you're talking infrastructure in the tens of millions of dollars, and that's probably a very conservative estimate. And I think we need to start working with the TRCA and saying, okay, short, medium, and long term, what can we do? Where are the real trouble points? And start building some designs that, with the assistance of other levels of government or whatever over time, that we can implement on a priority basis. Certainly, reestablishing the trail is, to me, that's just, yeah, great. But the long-term strategy is something that we have to tackle. And I don't expect this long-term strategy will be like a magic bullet that will be pulled out of the hat next month. I imagine it'll take perhaps years to develop the strategy and perhaps decades to implement the strategy. But I think we've got to really start getting serious about how that looks long-term.
Councillor Jordan.
Yes, and I agree with all that's been said. I'm thinking that I would like to add an amendment that to request that the TRCA staff work with our staff on developing a long-term strategy to deal with these and the potential for this funding partners, because from my knowledge, any capital works are funded by the municipality, so Durham Region would be. And at this point in time, when I sit on the TRCA, I can tell you that Durham Region does not fund the Conservation Authority to the same tune as other regions are. And I think we need to know as we go forward. I also believe that there were other orders of government involved in some of the other projects, such as down at Rouge, and it was huge, huge money. So that would be all, that we had an amendment that TRCA staff work with the town to develop medium and long-term strategies and identify funding partners. Something like that.
Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you. The McLaren, how close is that trail going to come to the residents? I can see it's closer to the church, and I mean, it looks like it's a long way away, but have you measured it?
I haven't gone out to measure it.
Because I'm wondering if you should notify those homes there that
Yes.
this is going to happen. That, and that's a considerable steep hill. In that
Toboggan hill.
location?
That's called the toboggan.
Sorry?
That's our toboggan hill.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Snow.
But I wondered if the trail was going to cost more because of having to cut into that hill.
So, through the chair, it won't actually cut into the hill. It'll be between the total slope of hill and the woodlot.
Okay.
We will be pushing that trail to the edge of the drip line of that woodlot so that we don't affect those trees, which are
Okay.
mostly black locust.
but as far away from the residential and from the church as possible, as far as we can get. And we would have to have some kind of public notification on all the work that we do.
Redco Pipes used to dump their pipes in this location. Was their surplus inventory that couldn't be used, plus it was supposed to keep the bank in. But then TRCA said it was detriment to the environment, so they pulled it all out. So that's the story of the piping that used to be there. So, and then the province put in a moratorium that no more infilling to the lake. And that's why we got the property. So I don't know about what's going to be allowed as far as bank stabilization. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dyes. Just to follow up on what you were saying with respect to blood protection, TRCA in the lake, like in the Rouge Valley, which I believe was extensive because of the undercutting of to the rail line. So there is I'd be interested to know, going forward, what the impacts are on other communities if we do something like that. I know that was done recently in Pickering when they dredged Frenchman's Bay and put the piers out, which changed the currents. So we never even got notification of that. So I think we need to understand what we're doing as well, and would like to know what type of fill they use for those projects. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an amendment. Do you want to read it again?
Sure. So it's adding a 6th clause that says that town staff work with TRCA staff to develop medium and long-term strategies, including a funding strategy for dealing with erosion control measures along the Ajax waterfront.
I think it was more to request the TRCA staff.
I think she's actually worded it correctly, because we don't have any power over the TRCA staff. We can only direct our staff to reach out to them.
Okay.
Well,
If that's because I want them to know that we've asked for it.
We could send them a copy of the resolution if you'd like.
So I need to vote on that first and then the whole thing, right? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. All in favor of the whole motion? I don't have to read it, right? Yay, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. I have had a request that Mr. Stewart be bumped up a tad in the presentation as in next, because I'm sure he's overstimulated back there by all of this discussion. So
moved.
thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
Should have done that an hour ago.
Yeah, well, I didn't even see him back there.
I just saw him, that's why I said it.
Thank you for your patience.
Mr. Stewart didn't make that request, by the way, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Mr. Stewart did or didn't?
Mr. Stewart has
Did
to
not.
attend Durham College graduation tonight, because I'm a board of governor, and I have to sit and watch all that.
That's very important. Thank you very much.
If I may.
Patience, yes.
Obviously, we all know Mr. Stewart. Steve is here today to present our financial statements. Steve Stewart is the partner at Deloitte, and working together with Sandy Strong, our manager of budgets and accounting services, has completed and audited our statements. You were sent them. They will be posted later today on the website. And Steve just has a few comments, and we can open it to questions afterwards.
Yeah, I will be quick. This generally is met with great enthusiasm. So just to let everyone know, as Sheila says, we have completed the audit of the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2016. The financial statements that we audit are prepared by management in accordance with public sector accounting standards. Those standards differ quite a bit from the accounting that's used internally, the municipal accounting. So there's a number of adjustments that get made from what you would typically see in terms of internal reporting. Note 14 to the financial statements, in fact, is a nice reconciliation between your approved operating budget and the budget that's presented in the financial statements. So we have conducted the audit. Our opinion is an unmodified or clean audit opinion on those financial statements, which states we believe the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the town as of December 31st, 2016, and the results of your operations for the year that ended. During the course of our audit, we did not identify any errors that required adjustment or remain unadjusted at the end of the year. Similarly, we are very comfortable that all of the disclosures that are required to be included in your financial statements in accordance with the public sector accounting standards have been included in your financial statements, so I'm quite comfortable with them. We found no significant deficiencies in internal controls. As part of our audit, we do look at the internal control environment. We do tests of controls. In some instances, it's a high-level design and implementation test. In other instances, we actually test the operating effectiveness of those controls throughout the period. The extent to which we test controls impacts on the extent of substantive work in those various areas. All in all, the control environment we have considered is sound. No concerns or problems in that area. In terms of the actual financial statements themselves, I won't go through in all great detail. The accounting policies that were used to prepare the statements are consistent with the previous years. There's no changes in the accounting standards for municipalities, and so the statements are consistent with prior years. I would suggest to you, in looking at the financial statements, that the town is in a fairly solid financial position, consistent with the previous years. In terms of the actual financial statements themselves, I don't think I'll go through any details. If you have questions on particular line items between Sandy, myself, and Sheila, we could probably answer them for you. The one thing I would highlight is my public service announcement to finance staff every year, is if you look at these financial statements, you will notice that there's a surplus reported of $645 million.
Where can we spend that?
This is the public service announcement I'm asked to make. Remember when I said there's a difference between municipal accounting and public sector? The biggest difference that would create that surplus is the fact that under the public sector standards that all governments must follow, capital assets or tangible capital assets are set up when you purchase them, and they're amortized over time. Whereas in the traditional municipal accounting model, you expense the capital assets. So by capitalizing those assets, you create a fairly significant surplus for accounting purposes, and in your case, I've been somewhere in the neighborhood of $520 million of that surplus is actually related to capital assets. There is a note in the financial statements, note 12, which actually breaks the surplus down for you and shows you the various components for it. So at the end of the day, we did not make any adjustments in preparing these financial statements. So the information that you're provided throughout the year wasn't adjusted. It's just strictly a matter of applying public sector accounting standards to create these differences. And really, that's all I need to say.
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. What page is this? It's the revenue note 16. I can't see the page. The gain on the disposal of tangible capital assets, 2.7 million. What is that for?
Do you want me to take that one, Steve?
You can. I wrote it down here.
Through the chair, the gain is associated with the disposal of the lands we sold at the Ajax Plaza.
I kind of thought that, thank you. And for the, you're not going to have a management letter then? There isn't any sort of internal?
No, there's nothing significant that we felt needed to be identified in the letter. We have, I would say, regular communication throughout the year as issues arise, be them accounting or control related. Staff here will get in touch with me, and we generally discuss those matters throughout the year. So at the end of the year, there's nothing exciting and no surprises, and that's certainly appreciated.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wonder if Mr. Stewart had the foresight to list bank erosion as one of the potential risks.
No, but I did listen intently to that.
Perhaps.
I only point out, though, that the risks, and you have to remember that in my audit, my lens is strictly in financial reporting, and so erosion of risks is not something that would ultimately be reported in financial.
I was joking. It's okay.
When you figure out how to fix it, I'll make sure it's accounted for properly.
Yeah. Very good.
Any other questions?
We proceed?
Thank you very much for staying.
Oh, my pleasure.
I know you had to, but.
Congratulations to you and your son.
Thanks very much. Yes, congratulations. Okay, where were we?
5.5.
5.5. Well, that sounds like I don't know,
I have
you're all
flashbacks. The same
It's all yours. Good afternoon.
Don't shoot the messenger, start there.
You have the report.
Yes, we do.
The details. Does anybody have any questions for discussion?
Sounds like Pat.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the work, but I would like to change the daily meeting of the
No,
meeting
that's
house.
not, no.
The meeting.
That's the next one.
Next one.
Through the chair,
Just a
I-
contract.
that's-
Just a contract.
You're not ready for me. That's the next one.
Wrong
This
side.
is about,
So
we're seeking approval on the contract to
I
award
know.
this
Yeah,
and
I
actually
understand.
construct it in 2017.
I was ahead of myself.
Yeah.
That's a lot more money than what we thought it would be, right?
Absolutely.
To the tune of nearly $2 million.
About 1.5. There's a lot of contributing factors, and as we go through the analysis, I've detailed the costs associated with it. And I want to bring council back to when we took the building in 2015. We were requested to make a funding application. That application happened. We were lucky to receive some funding in regards to this project. Then we retained a consultant, and then we went through the detailed design. And now we are where we're at with this project, understanding the complexity of this building and how we have to construct it.
Will it be relatively easy to maintain, or will some of the amendments to the building be costly to maintain?
Through the chair to Councilor Brown, the improvements that we're making to the building are going to help it in the long term to maintain it. Currently, it's not being maintained, hence why I believe it came into the town's care. If the improvements were not undertaken, the building would eventually fall into itself. So there are some definite requirements structurally, first and foremost, that need to happen. Then there's the next step, is to be able to make it an accessible place that people can use.
I think it's worthwhile, but it's a terrible pill to swallow. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dice.
I answered my questions.
Okay.
Old building.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Councillor Cogman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have visions of St. Francis dancing in my head.
This is called St. Francis the Revenge.
And my words back then included money pit, and I've done a lot of projects on old buildings, and I know everything you touch opens. I'm doing one right now, and everything I touch turns into 5 more jobs. This is almost tripled from the original to the 2.9 million in here, project cost from the original. And I don't think, and I speak for myself, I sure didn't see us venturing anything to do this project when we first started, especially not over $800,000. So there's a healthy contingency here, and we seem to, and I don't know, not always, but often use the contingency, and I'm really hoping that this isn't another one of those 50,000 projects that turns into $4 million, which is what happened. The saving grace for St. Francis, we got federal provincial thirds, but this one we don't. That 15%, I sure hope it's enough, because when you're doing a building like this, it can escalate very, very quickly. So we'll see. Thank you.
Mayor Parrish.
Did we have a preliminary estimate, I believe, from ACOM?
Through the chair, yes, we did, Mayor Parrish.
So what was the amount of the preliminary estimate from ACOM?
1.4.
So this is double, roughly, what they said. That's a significant error. So, and I realize that old buildings, heritage buildings, have unique problems, et cetera, et cetera. We now know that pretty well around here, and you know it better than most.
Yes, we do.
But is that kind of untoward to be that far back?
We've had discussions with ACOM in regards to the discrepancy in regards to the final estimate provided to the town to where we ended up in the budget, where we ended up with the final tender results. The other contributing factor.
What did we
that-
pay them for their work to give us that preliminary estimate?
The total value of their contract is roughly about $100,000.
Okay, do we have a continuing relationship with ACON?
Not
To
anymore.
date- To date, yes, we do.
Do they have further involvement with this project?
As the architect of record, they are required to do the contract administration of the drawings that they prepared.
Okay. So when you say you had discussions, I take it that's a polite way of saying that words were exchanged.
Look at her face, she's saying read between the lines.
I get it, but,
We cannot talk about
but
this.
in my world and in a lot of other people's world, when somebody's out of whack like that, and it wasn't like, what do you think, what'll it cost? Oh, about $1.5 million, and you didn't pay anything for it, and it's just off the cuff, and thanks a lot. But when you pay money for their expertise, and they're off the mark by 100%, it seems to me that there should be some kind of recourse from that. Has that been explored at all?
The purchasing policy does recognize vendor performance. And this is something that we've discussed with our purchasing department. And I would have to say that ACOM would not be invited to bid our documents going forward, our RFPs.
We're not friends anymore.
Okay, so this has resulted in them effectively being off the preferred list of service providers.
That would be my intent once we finish the project with them. We're in a contractual agreement unless we
Right.
fired them and retained another consultant.
Right.
Which is tricky at this stage
Right.
of the contract, but going forward, because they are our architect of record for Paradise, which is our presentation, we have had discussions in regards to their performance to date on Doric, how we intend to monitor them going forward on both projects. And then when we finish both projects, we will do performance vendor recognition, and we will not invite them back anymore.
We put in a proposal to the feds for the funding that we got, some $450,000 or something. $434,000 for, based on their, what we thought was we knew it wasn't an exact price, but what we thought was a ballpark number. Is there any way we can go back on the federal funding application to seek more?
Through the chair, town staff haven't explored that. And the original budget that we applied through the CHIP funding was in the neighborhood of $1.7 million when we went forward with that application, looking for 800, receiving 4. So to understand where we are now, we would have to go back and I haven't explored it, to be quite honest with you. That would be a discussion that I would have.
And I don't know, that book might have closed and that ship sailed and all the other sayings, but it just raises me with an issue that maybe there's some angle there. The internal debenture of $863,000.
Yeah.
What?
834.
I just get all that, it's always 34, I should just explain to me that's an internal borrowing.
Yes, through the chair, we would set that up as internal borrowing. We don't set it up officially here for a few reasons. One is the project has to go through substantial completion, so we know the actual amount. To your point on contingency, if it's not used, it in turn can be lowered. And then we have to go through the process with the region as well. So what we do is in our financial sustainability plan, we have limits on how much that we can internally finance, and this would be at the limit for this building.
Okay. So just from a financial point of view then, this report and the financial aspects of this report are financeable. What are the repercussions of this cost overrun for council?
Well, a couple things that are important to note on them. One is that we are within our financial sustainability plan, so we're following the rules that we have. The second thing is that we established spending caps to build our reserves, so we have the opportunity to use those amounts we're building to fund on situations like this where we need funding. And I think the last one is if we had this price tag, and I don't want to say this quite wrong, if we knew this price tag at the very beginning, it would have been the road we would have taken, and from a financing type of view, we would have employed the internal debt on it.
Well, I agree with the comment that Councillor Brown made earlier. And if I'd known the price tag was $2.9 million, I would have supported it anyways. I think this is a really important project. I felt that the St. Francis project was a really important project. And I know that when you get into heritage buildings and you open a wall and you go into a foundation, there's surprises. And the best surprise is no surprise. But I still fully support this project. How realistic, Ms. Bridgman, is December 31st in your opinion?
Well, I knew you would ask that, Mayor.
How perceptive of you?
And I checked the funding regulations, and we have until substantial completion of the calendar year of 2018. So we have some additional time that we can complete our project, because I checked that against the funding that we'll receive when we complete this project. It all depends on what we find when we go into the ground. And I would like to say that it will be seamless, but this is a considerably old facility that has structural issues. And we also are required by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism to do an archaeological study for the entire time that we are doing that excavation. So it is as tricky or trickier than when we dug into the basement at St. Francis. So we are hopeful. We have aligned ourselves with a good contractor. That's why we go through that process of pre-qualifying these generals. Clifford Restoration is an excellent company that are very educated in this type of work. But at the end of the day, with the information that I have, we will probably be looking at past December. We are hopeful, but until we get out of the ground, I can't for certain say that we'll be complete. We're hoping and we're estimating for December 31st, but until I have that structural component completed and we know what our situation is.
Once you get on site with the contractor and the project is well underway, you'll be able to give us an update, a new snapshot of when substantial completion is likely to be, et cetera, sometime in the fall, perhaps give us an up-to-date synopsis on that.
Through the chair, Mayor Parrish, I'm happy to come back to council. It is also part of our project update list that I will be generating, similar to what we've done with Riverside and Pat Valley Square. Those are the snapshot reports that are going to be going forward as the LED strategy comes forward. We'll be sending those to you on a monthly basis. But if it's the desire of council for staff to come back and provide an updated report on the project, I'd be happy to do that once we get into it. And I would say it's safe to say closer to September, end of September, beginning of October.
Thank you.
Councilor Jordan.
Oh, I just thank you for the report. I think it'll caught our breaths for sure. I mean, that it is. I mean, that's saying it mildly. But I mean, the choice is really just not do anything and let it fall apart, I guess, or continue down the path. And it's one of the few heritage buildings that we have. I hope it's the last that this council has to do. I'll tell you that. But I mean, I know the same concerns arose with St. Francis, and yet I never have anyone question the money we spent for that facility. They love it. They're proud of it. And I I think that we need to say not all heritage buildings, but I think as a municipality, we do have to say key ones. And I guess the lesson learned is like just multiply the first figure that comes up and be prepared. I mean, it's the same. I think there was a movie, The Money Pit.
There was.
And it was the same thing.
Tom
I mean,
Hanks.
yeah, it's the same thing, and you either just scrap it, which would be terrible, or keep moving ahead. And fortunately, we do have the financing to move ahead. So I don't think we really have a choice.
Through the chair, to Councilor Jordan, the costs are a lot higher than we anticipated. But through the bidding process, we had pre-qualified 7 contractors. Of those contractors, only 3 submitted bids. So that does shorten our pool of people. I would still stand behind the requirement to pre-qual, even though we pay a premium to do that. You don't want Joe's contracting going in and touching a building that has those unique needs. And though there is a premium that's added to it, I would stand behind making that recommendation again.
Yes.
It's just unfortunate that we didn't have all of the contractors supply bid.
And just one quick question, I think I know the answer, but there's nothing here that you would recommend we could eliminate to bring the costs down.
Through the chair, Councilor Jordan, we have looked at a number of options, only to dig out half the basement, to only come back to, if you only dug out the basement, then you have differential sediment, and how does that work in regards to the future viability of that property? Because it's a unique design, and if you don't actually have that extra space to be able to place people, place storage, there's a number of other user groups that use that facility that are under the Masons right now. And there was a lot of discussion in regards to how they would use the space. And then looking beyond the Masons, maybe they're not the town's primary tenant going forward, and how we could use that space for all town staff or for any permitting that the town wanted to use that facility going forward. So we tried to look at it beyond who is in the building, and that knowing this project will be able to support that in the future.
Thanks.
I'll move it if it's done.
Oh, I think Director Sheila, just I don't know. Follow Sheila, I'm trying to be official.
Thank you. Mr. Ford was kind enough to remind me of a piece that I didn't tell you, but it's good news. You know that we're moving forward for our next tax increase at 1.75%. That exceptions were identified in the last set of reports I did for you. This issuance of debt would not be part of those exceptions. It will be included as part of the base tax increase.
Okay.
Okay. I need a motion.
Move it.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay. Meredith, Director Meredith. Got that one right. Director Dave.
That's okay.
I don't think we need a presentation.
You know, no, actually, it was my intent just to say, I think the recommendation in the staff report was fairly self-explanatory in terms of the thought process that staff went through to bring forward the recommendations. Obviously, there are a number of options that we consider from the staff perspective, and we tried to articulate in the report some of the thoughts that we had as a committee in coming forward with the recommendations. I do have sort of Michael Sawchuk here as well. Obviously, Michael is, from a historical perspective, more knowledgeable in terms of the settlements and the historical names that we've identified. So if there were any questions that we were able to answer, this council makes this decision. So just open it up to any questions.
I think Pat's up now. She has this one.
I would move that we amend item 1 to the Quaker Meeting House. Yeah, that's it.
Councillor Guys?
You want me to explain it? Why?
I agree.
Okay.
The report was
But I think the community knows that should stay exact. It's part of history.
Any other comments?
I agree. With that amendment, I agree with the whole damn thing.
All in favor? That was fast.
You okay?
You waited all that time, 30 seconds.
I learned a lot.
You did. And you can now go home.
One other thing.
Okay, not yet.
Sorry,
Don't go.
Sorry. I do think that in the fullness of time, when this thing is completed and it formally has its new name, the Quaker Meeting House, I do think there needs to be some kind of storyboard or something that tells the Timothy Rogers story and his association with the building and the founding of Pickering Village in large extent by the Quakers that he brought into this area. I think it's a kind of forgotten story sometimes, and I think this building is an opportunity to reacquaint our population with that very important story. So I don't know how that would be done, a storyboard or something, a plaque. I don't know. I'll leave that to the experts to deal with that.
Well, and through the chair, there's currently a plaque on site that does give a bit of the description of Timothy Rogers and his connection to the land. So that story, at least the beginnings or elements of that story, are being told, but I think there's always more that can be done.
So the one other element that we did speak about from the staff perspective that we will take back and give some thought to prior to the opening of the facility was the potential to name the primary banquet room, potentially as like a Timothy Rogers banquet room. Because there are two rooms within it, the one that the Masons will be permitting, then there's the town facility. So we had given some thought to, if it was the meeting house on a recommendation, that we could go forward with the Timothy Rogers banquet room, and then sort of there was going to be sort of the Masons meeting
Kind of like
room or something.
facility,
So we
yeah.
named the two internal rooms, so I think there could be some recognition, similar to what we've done with the naming and a bit of the story for each of the rooms that have been named in Town Hall as well. So that's something that we will consider as well.
Councilor Ashby?
Yeah, that's fine. I guess I voted for it, but just in looking at this name, the Quaker Meeting House, I just think we have to be careful we're not excluding anybody from our community. Because if I see this sign without having the knowledge, I might think it's exclusive to the Quaker community. I'm just thinking like how residents may take this. So with our community and our engagement and on our communications piece, we just have to ensure that it's not exclusive and it's an inclusive community space for the community. So
Some people don't believe actually was a St. Francis.
No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But this is part of the whole
It's just history.
communication piece. Because there's a lot of new residents in town that don't have this history, and it's up to us to educate them too.
I hear you.
Thank you. We're done this?
We're done.
Okay, we voted. We're good. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to jump down to presentation 6.2.
Yay.
Which one was that one?
That was the naming of
Did Pat move something?
Got changed to Quaker Meeting House.
Quaker Meeting House.
What's Steve?
All right. Good afternoon, thank you. This is going to be extremely brief.
You're already over time.
Excellent, we're moving on. This is basically to let you know where we wanted to update the entry signs. Their current locations, there are 10 locations throughout town as main entry points, north and south, north, going southward and east and west. Our current signs right now are part of the ISO designation, and which is now going to be removed from the sign. We were anticipating a full rebrand, but although that takes a little bit more time, we really wanted to just refresh and bring some current messaging to the signage. So what we're looking at is, again, a design update is replacing the ISO reference, And incorporating in the seal prior, we didn't have anything else to really enhance the seal. This kind of brings more of our history to the seal and some explanation around it. And the new signs will then be ordered and installed throughout the summer. Which will take probably about 2 weeks or so for manufacture, and then up to Mr. Meredith's team through the summer. I think that was, told you that. Is that it?
But I hope nobody comes by boat.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. It looks good. I like it better than the other one because you could hardly really be bicycle friendly. It just smacked at you and.
Some bad bike.
I mean, look at it. What your eyes go to.
Yes.
I mean, and I like the fact that you've incorporated the corporate seal. That seems to be lost, as I said it would be at the time that you eliminated it and made it this modern thing. And you don't use it enough anymore. And that's part of our history as well. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Can the, Pat raised the town historical logo. Can that be made bigger? Like, not to overpower the sign or anything, but
Yes, it
can it be
can.
made a bit larger?
Through the chair, certainly we can increase the size of the corporate seal.
Your full width.
Parliamentary signs, when does it traditional that the population signs change after a census?
Through the chair, the population usually will follow about 6 months or so after. They're along the MTO. They will update the signs on major highways. We don't have population on any of our entry signs
Right.
itself. They'll be done on the highways.
No, apparently we don't. Thank you very much. I hope you learned a lot through this meeting too.
Yes, I have. I'll be back.
Oh, you're not done yet.
No.
There you
I'll be
go.
back.
More to learn. 6-3. Hello, Robert and Jake.
Got a long way to go.
We'll be quick as well.
I'll move it.
You can be quick.
sat here for 4 hours.
We come here to do a movie.
Hey, if you guys want to move it, I'll for that. So, good afternoon, thank you very much. I did want to apologize though. I guess my fingers were typing really quickly and I didn't realize on the report on page 2 in the first paragraph, it references phase 12 of the report or of the days plan. We're only on phase 2. We have not moved to phase 12, so that was my error and I will get that corrected. So again, we're here just to do some highlights on the Diversity and Community Engagement Plan Phase 2. We did go through some community consultations, which Mr. Sahak will speak about, and we'll just get straight to that next slide, and we'll go right through there.
Town staff engaged in an extensive community consultation process for phase 2 of the days plan, including key informant and stakeholder interviews, targeted and general focus groups, and online surveys. It's important to note that overall, these consultations were incredibly positive, with the town being recognized as leaders in the areas of diversity and inclusion, and staying current in terms of the changing needs of our community, especially in the areas of programs and services being more culturally diverse, as well as inclusive for those with accessibility needs. Just a note, for phase 2, the 4 priority areas of town as an employer, programs and services, community and civic engagement, and neighborhood strengthening initiatives. They were condensed into 3, with neighborhood strengthening initiatives being combined with community and civic engagement. And in addition, a new priority, youth engagement, was included.
So under the priority of town as an employer, staff training focusing on all dimensions of diversity was highlighted. For example, in the areas of mental health issues and working with the LGBT+ community. The latter of which also leads into creating positive spaces throughout town facilities, following the lead the library initiated last year. Other action items of interest include undertaking a staff diversity survey and inclusion index, as well as exploring staff and community mentorship opportunities. And as with all future phases of an original plan, the community stressed the continuance of a number of initiatives moving forward. But really, these have now become core components of our staff culture and our work plan initiatives. And areas to highlight under this priority include fostering the diversity and inclusion ambassador volunteer role, which was initiated for the Pan Am Games in 2015. These volunteers will be paramount as the town moves forward with respect to diversity and inclusion initiatives, such as future phases of the Ajax for All campaign.
And under the priority of programs and services, there was a definitive desire by community for the town to continue to be innovative in the diverse programming we provide for the community, and to continue to respond to the emerging needs of our residents. In addition, it was noted that frequently accessed documents and materials should be available in accessible and raw formats to allow for easier translation, whether that be in a variety of different languages or an accessible format for those visually or hearing impaired.
Community members were unanimous in agreeing that the town's diversity conference, Ajax for All campaign, and Impact Ajax program were highly successful and should continue to be delivered as innovative ways to engage our community as a whole. The community also spoke to enhancing community engagement tactics such as the resident guide and the language line, while investigating creating other innovative ways to engage the community, such as a speaker or an education series. Connecting the not-for-profit sector with the business community, service clubs, and community groups and organizations was also highlighted, as well as a strong focus to recognize the rich history of the Indigenous peoples of the lands which Ajax started on.
And finally, we know and recognize our youth are our future. And the community stressed the importance of getting youth involved and engaged in diversity and inclusion initiatives. Especially opportunities for youth to come together for dialogue, whether that's during Youth Week at the Diversity Conference, or by developing a youth-specific speaker series. In addition, based on the success of the town's Ajax for All campaign, the community wanted to see a youth edition of Ajax for All created to showcase the incredible diversity amongst our youth while putting out a call to action to see beyond stereotypes.
So as community developers, we love being able to engage our community, whether that's through festivals, events, cultural opportunities, conferences, or volunteer opportunities. All these things offer an opportunity for dialogue. Sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative, but we can always take something constructive from it. And this phase 2 was just that. It provided a great dialogue on our diversity and inclusion journey, and although we have very much to be proud of, our work is not over, and these recommendations will be integral for staff to continue to foster a culture of inclusion in Ajax. So thank you. I know it's been a long day, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work. I mean, we're definitely seen as a leader in these issues, and I think it's important that we keep up the momentum. I just wanted to ask, on page 123, it talked about staff training programs and providing specific training for hiring panels on personal bias. I think it's important that that be provided for counselors as well, because on occasion we also sit on hiring panels, and I think that certainly as leaders of the organization, we need to know at least what the staff did, if not more. So I think it's very important that counselors also be included in any of that training. So I'll put that forward, and I hope you'll add it in. Mm-hmm. And my next one, really pleased to see the discussion around mentorship programs and internship programs. That's something that certainly was indicated in the first diversity strategy, and it's sat there for a long time. I know that the Toronto Region Conservation Authority has been doing that for a number of years, and I'm sure there's other organizations, so I'll be really happy to see us move ahead on those actions. And my last comment is researching the history of Indigenous peoples and investigate opportunities to recognize this history through plaque installations. I think it needs to be more than just plaques. I think we need to add another avenues of communication, whatever. It could be through Ajax today. It doesn't need, by reading this, it looks like it's just limited to plaques, and I think that's a wrong message.
Yeah.
It needs to be more than plaques is great. It needs to be more than that.
Through the chair, we can wordsmith that a little bit.
Great. Other than that, I'm happy to move it.
Mayor Parrish?
Yeah, just on the Indigenous peoples, we talk about diversity and inclusiveness, and we don't have many towns and cities have large Indigenous populations, and we, to the best of my knowledge, really don't. But and we talk about the Quaker heritage and the Irish, Scottish, and other settlers, but the Indigenous peoples in this area has been largely ignored, and that just happens. But way back when I was a young lawyer, I was retained by a local family who had a farm near Duffins Creek, because every year they would cultivate their fields, and as is done in archaeological studies, after the cultivation and rain, artifacts would come to the surface. And they, over the years, collected literally bushel baskets full of spearheads, arrowheads, and other artifacts that came right from the vicinity of the mouth of Duffins Creek, which was a major gathering place for Indigenous peoples at that time. And I had the pleasure, as a young lawyer, to sue the town of Pickering to return to the family these spearheads and arrowheads, which the town of Pickering said were a gift, and we said, no, they were just loaned to you for display. And that was a wonderful case, because I won, and I think
That's when it all started.
and that's how it all started. But I do think that there, especially in that area, and the Duffins watershed was part of a major route that led all the way through to Lake Simcoe and ultimately to the upper Great Lakes. And so there is something there that we really need to recognize in whatever ways are appropriate. So I was glad to see that in the report.
Councillor Dias. So you've done a really good job. We are known as a very diverse community and accepting. Such a good job that I think most people forget that it also means people with disabilities and women, of course. And I think that that's a concern as we age, particularly for the future again and how that's going to mold the future of the community. We could gain a lot of information from that because there are particular illnesses that come with different cultures. And we have a hospital here that needs to be able to react to that and provide what's necessary in the future. But it also means when we're planning our websites, things like that where there's visual impairments, you have to be able to read it. And we're not always getting that right away. Neither is the CNIB, I have to say. But, there are things to take into consideration with people with disabilities, particularly when we're an aging population. So I don't know how we get that message out a little clearer as well.
Through the chair, I think there's a number of things that we need to look at, especially because there's AODA factors, but there's also, as we move forward with the age-friendly community strategy, as we move forward with that, there are differing things. So, it's starting to now come out in some of our cross-corporate team meetings. We just had one on Friday where, we talk about to keep and consider, age-friendly furniture is different types of furniture. It's higher furniture. So if we're going to be, purchasing things that are going to be in public areas, we need to consider those as we move forward. We just completed the senior strategy. They're all part and parcel of that type of thing. So we need to remember that. And even with font sizes and colors, people think of font sizes first in order to for a visual impairment, but there are also different colors colors that, when you have, light on dark and dark on light, sometimes it's different when you're reading. So we do have to make sure that we continue to keep that in sort of top of mind when we're doing some of those things. So, yeah.
I'm appalled too when I go out anywhere in the community, shopping, for example. There's not one seat in any department store or store you go in. If you are shopping with your mother or your elderly father or whoever,
Or your bored
there
husband.
is not one seat. And I don't understand that at all. But there's a lot of work to do. But I appreciate what you've done.
Councillor Brown.
I didn't have my hand
Okay,
up.
there we go. Thank you.
I was just going to say, though, the
Okay.
accessibility committee is doing a lot of that.
Absolutely.
Oh, they're doing that, yeah.
Great, thank you for your presentation.
You need a motion?
There's a motion. Motion to approve. All in favor? That's good with that. Paradise Washrooms. Andrew Jackson, you are back. Oh, with Buddy.
Back again.
So good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, and senior staff. We're here, of course, to present the detailed designs for the Paradise Park washroom facility and the overall park strategic plan. Back in 2011, of course, council endorsed the shoreline improvement strategy, which detailed and built upon recommendations in the approved 2005 waterfront management plan. It was the recommendation of both strategies to encourage new recreational, cultural, and ecological opportunities to the Ajax shoreline. Through the consultative process, it was decided that these opportunities presented themselves in the Pickering Beach neighborhood in the vicinity of Paradise Park. So back in 2015, we retained an architect to go through the detailed designs for the washroom and the park, but realizing that we needed to establish the road alignment, we put that project kind of on hold until that was established. And in March 2016, Council approved the realignment of Lakeview Boulevard through class environmental assessment. So the design process has been a very consultative process with town staff, various advisory committees, and stakeholders to review the design concepts as they were developing. The input of these groups is very valuable and has been reflected in the designs that will be presented to you today. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and Andrew's going to walk through the building, the site, and set the context, and then I'm going to discuss the building. So, Andrew?
Thank you, Catherine. Through the chair. The presentation is essentially in two parts. One will be the site and context, and then the building itself. Paradise Park, it may be difficult to see on these slides, but Paradise Park is essentially, it's laid out in zones. The north side of the park is mostly active recreation, tennis, playground, ball diamonds, open field for recreational play. The central zone is the existing building, parking, and roadway, and the south zone is the open space, trail, beach, wetland. So in working with the staff, with the consulting team, the challenge was to create a design that enhanced these zones. We didn't want to deviate or disturb the integrity of the existing park because it is an historic park. There's a lot of passion. People around here have a lot of passion towards this park. So we were trying to maintain that integrity. So you'll see as we go through the slides here how we've attempted to achieve that. And the other challenge was how do we connect those zones together? So it's really a sort of an east-west kind of alignment. Through the design that we're presenting, we've connected those zones by a north-south spine, which all of these different activity zones then fall into or are connected to. The park has the tennis courts, the playground, the ball diamonds. There's the existing building in the center, bioswale wetland. There's the waterfront trail, and then some open space and beach. These are a couple of slides of the existing conditions. I'm sure everyone here at the table is quite familiar with the park. The playground to the north, the ball diamond open space to the northeast. We also have the waterfront and beach, waterfront trail and beach areas, and open space areas as well. Now, interesting to note that the hope is that a few of these slides, in a couple years from now, you'll be able to stand there, take these pictures, and you'll still see these images, because we are trying very, very hard to maintain that park and the history of the park. So the master plan, or the plan that we're presenting today, we still maintain these lateral zones of active play to the north. We've got the naturalized area to the northwest, which runs to the existing tennis courts, playground, and ball diamond and open space play. What we've done here is we've created this new zone, or not as new, enhanced the existing zone with new playground equipment, new playground facility, connected to the tennis courts by an open space gathering place with a shade structure. These things are connected, these elements are connected through this central spine, which is a walkway that goes through the site. You cross the road over a safe pedestrian crossing, a raised crossing, to the building with ample walkways, pathways, trail around and within the building, around the building to the trails, both new and existing. You can then access the proposed beach volleyball or the natural play elements, the beach and open space. So these zones of parking, building, recreation, open space are still there and are maintained. I'll throw these notes up here, but to reiterate, we've got the existing tennis courts, the playground, the active recreation, the proposed new washroom facility central to the park in an approximately location of where the existing building is now. We also have a smaller parking lot to the west and a larger parking lot to the east, 25 to the west and 50 cars to the east. Approximately where a lot of the parking exists now. We have the twin trail and the waterfront trail, the future beach volleyball, the natural playground, the beach, the future wetland, as well as the safe crossings for pedestrians. One of the things that has been a concern lately, and we touched on a bit of it today, is the flooding issue. It's been across the Ajax waterfront. It's also been very evident here. We've tried very, very hard to create a design that mitigates some of those concerns by having the parking with proposed permeable paving, with a sub-base that's very permeable. We recognize that there is going to be flooding in this area. It is within sections, the large section of the park is within a floodplain. There will be flooding. There's a spillway through the site from the Crothers Creek to the north that comes down to the beach. We are looking at creating a wetland, which will be a holding facility for some of those storm events. We are also looking at backflow prevention along the beach so that any of that surging water from the lake that goes northward into the park could be stopped by that preventer. So there are some things that we're doing here that will hopefully mitigate some of those things, as well as the building, which will be waterproof. There's a couple of little blow-ups of the north end of the park where the playground, the gazebo, the active zone is, with the main pedestrian spine going south across the safe crossing to the building. A couple of examples of what the park and the playground will look like with a gazebo and new playground elements. The southern quadrant to the north of that image is the new washroom facility with connections to trails and open space and some play elements. So we've got, I call it future because we are working on incorporating these elements into the design, into the detailed design. We will determine whether they are through this construction or whether it would be a phased approach. And these are images of examples of what we mean by a natural playground, which is coming out of the shoreline improvement strategy recommendations. Is that we were looking at a different kind of playground here, and we think we found a really good location in the park to provide some of these elements that are a little bit more natural. We've got logs, we've got other elements here. These are just images. We are working on the final design for this. The next slide is pertaining to the building itself.
Thanks, Andy. So it was important for the washroom to be designed to integrate with the surrounding community. We had a lot of public consultation with members of the residents that live within the Paradise area. So it was very important that it responded to the architecture that is currently existing within Paradise Park. So we have a stone veneer and wood textured metal cladding, and it's contextually relevant to the surroundings. In the vestibule, we're also working with TRCA to take some local ash trees and install them on the inside of the building. This will be, will further bond the building to the site. The building has a unique symmetrical floor plan. It's about 115 square meters, which isn't much larger than the existing facility that's there. The main access of the buildings runs through the entrance vestibule and ties the building to the site. The male and female washrooms and the utility rooms are on the east and west side of the building. The building has a low profile, so that was very important to the residents to make sure that it minimized the impacts to the residents in their existing viewing corridor. So that's something that we took into consideration when we were designing the building. The vestibule also contains, as you can see, the glazing at both the north and south entrance, which allows for the maintaining the open views to the lake and to the park to the north. There will also be walkways, seating areas, bike racks, and pedestrian areas that surround the building. The building will be fully AODA compliant. We'll have a family change room inside and modest washrooms and family washroom, universal washroom located in the space. The parking is adjacent to the building. There was a proposal at the beginning of this project to put change rooms, but based on public feedback, we've reduced the size of the washrooms, and we just have change rooms to just have washrooms in there now. So it's a more modest building than we anticipated when we started down this path, based on the consultative process that we've had. So I just want to show you some of the elevations. So you can see some of the elevations all around the building. Stone, the use of stone. The ash will be nice on the interior. We're just working on the details of that. And that's the back. So that's, if you're standing, it's the south elevation, so looking from the north side. So any questions, comments?
Councilor Drew.
Yes.
So, first of all, how many washrooms, and the change room is there, and then the washrooms are part of the change room? I didn't quite understand.
Through the chair, originally when the project went forward, it was a change room washroom. But through the public consultation process, it was determined that a change room was concerning to residents, and we questioned if it would be required. You can change in a washroom. So in an effort to respond to public and to understand the elements that were within the space, staff reduced the size and removed the change rooms, and we just have washrooms.
So how many washrooms are there total?
So there's 5 in the female, and 3 in the male, and then we have a universal washroom.
So 9.
9 in total, sorry.
Are the I mean, I guess I'm a little concerned if you've got children and you're trying to change in the washroom.
hard to get in and close the door with some of them.
Do you have a universal washer?
Not everybody can use that one.
Should get.
It's AODA compliant, you can drive a scooter in there.
So people could change in there as well.
Well, I think that if you're a grandfather and you want to bring your granddaughter into the change room, the family/universal washroom provides that opportunity. So you don't have, as grandfather, have to bring your granddaughter into a male change room.
Will it fit all four of them?
Absolutely, Mayor Perry.
Good. I'm sold.
There's a change table, there's an adult change table in the family washroom, or the universal, I like to call it universal because it's more diverse. It responds to all.
As long as you've looked at it and there's enough room for people to change, and particularly if they have a couple kids, whatever. That's
Through
all.
the chair,
That's all my
Councilor Jordan,
concern.
have you ever had the opportunity to use the universal washroom at the other recreation center?
Probably haven't. No. Because if you mean universal means accessible or?
No, I know what you mean, and I have used it.
So the universal washroom, and really the term has changed over time based on diversity strategies and universals for all. It used to be called a family washroom, so you could go in there with your family if you had a stroller and you had 3 kids and there was enough space. It's also accessible. You could drive a scooter in there, park your scooter, and it also has an adult change room. So those are very common in all the new facilities that we've created. There's one at the operations center, there's one at the other recreation center. So where we have the opportunity to create that, it's something that we look at through design.
Okay, so if there's room, I think we need to label it as something, like some people would not know what a universal washroom is. So if it has that sign on the door, maybe we need to say something so that people know they can change with their kids or whoever they want to change with in it.
Through the chair, Councilor Jordan, we will absolutely create a signage policy that would be able to identify that.
So that people know that. My next one, using ash trees inside, you mean like siding or something? Is that what is
Sorry,
it?
your question?
You said that you were going to use ash trees in the interior.
Yes. So there's these little walls, just little walls here on the interior, and in our discussions with the TRCA, and that is part of our stakeholder consultation through the park development and through the building to use product, and we thought that would be unique in some of the ash trees that have been taken down. TRCA is actually doing some very interesting stuff with some of the trees that they've had to remove, milling some boardroom tables for their various meeting rooms. And in our discussion with Restoration Services, they are willing to mill some wood that we can apply and put in, and we thought that would be unique to the building and link it back to Ajax as well.
Okay. And could you do the same with benches or seating outside, things like that?
We haven't had that discussion, but I'm sure we could enter into those discussions with TRCA. So
I
they
think
would be unique for
It
that
would be,
space.
and I think it shows that you've used something that, we otherwise would have done nothing with. And I've seen some of the things they've done, and I think it's really great.
And to Robert's point earlier, we've been in discussion, again, when we're looking at furniture and benches, we have to conform to the AODA compliance, but now understanding the age-friendly furniture and how we can manage that through design going forward.
The other thing I want to ask, have you looked at an outdoor shower? I know a lot of places have, a small shower, shorter one to wash your feet off.
Through the chair, yes, we have.
And is that incorporated?
It doesn't show in the drawings, but it is, through further discussions with Mr. Meredith and myself, it is something that will be implemented into the design.
Oh, good, because I think it should be. My next one is, you talked earlier on the flooding issue, and if you do stuff in certain areas, it affects others. So I'm wondering about the armor stone and the backflow prevent or whatever you call it, where's that water going to go then? Have we really looked at where we're going to push it to?
So through the chair, as part of what I said earlier, that TRCA has been in consultation with the town through this entire process. As part of the road design, we had to do modeling in regards to do we raise the road, and if we raise the road, what are the impacts to that, to the roads to the east and to the west and to Ebony, and to understand kind of some of the measures that we can employ that would help direct the waters to a safe area. So if somebody is in the park and they're in the parking area, are they in an area where they can safely get out of the Paradise area? And we're talking flooding of maybe 6 to 8 inches at a total. But as part of the site plan application, we are looking at developing an emergency response strategy if there was ever any flooding there. The backflow preventer is something that we're looking at that would be employed out in Lake Ontario. And then the culverts that would go under the road and how they're conveying water. Right now, the existing culverts are somewhat blocked. And with the installation of new culverts and new plantings, it's only going to improve the ability for water to egress, but we do have issues in regards to when the water goes north. So.
And just on the future projects, when will you decide whether they'll be in place or not? I look at the natural playground. Is that just using like logs and that we have? Because we have a lot of them now down the road.
Through the chair, we do have to be very careful how we incorporate some of those elements so that they're safe and basically CSA compliant. So there are off-the-shelf type elements, sometimes made out of concrete, that look like logs, that look like toadstools, they look like elements that are natural. So we would look at that. There's companies that produce that. We will also look and see if there's ways of using actual logs that are safe. That's more of a detailed design that we'll get into the next phase. I'm sorry, was there another question?
I'm just wondering when the next phase is that in the
right. So
capital
we are hoping that those elements will be part of this construction. We're looking at the costing and whatnot, and if it's doable, then it would be part of this phase of development.
So when would you know that?
Oh, within the next month.
So you can let us know even if it's coming out? I mean, I think it'd be really nice if that was all part of it. And, you know, I guess growing up in an era where kids played, no, it's almost like we're, you know, don't dare do anything because they might hurt themselves. It's just, I don't know. They'll find a log somewhere and they'll play on it, but we have to manufacture them, and rocks, and I know there's lots of rocks around.
Through the chair, I think, to Councilor Jordan, we have to respond to Andrew's comment on CSA requirements and compliance, and we do have public health that come in and they inspect all of our playgrounds on an annual basis, and it's important that we follow that. But to your point, whenever we get the opportunity to look at new playground elements like the mine rock that and the dinosaur dig that we did at the Audley Recreation Center, we're looking to build on that. And we have the zip line up at ARC now, which is another unique feature, and we continue to build on that. But we are very sensitive in making sure that this project comes in on budget, so we're trying to understand that, and I believe Mr. Meredith would like to speak.
I just wanted to sort of be clear on the expectation as well, because when we did put the budget estimate forward, prior to getting into detailed design and completing the public consultation, the focus was on the park redevelopment, which is essentially the playground, the gazebo, the trail connections, the washroom, and those were the primary focus. Through the process of public consultation, we identify a long-term plan which included the beach volleyball and the natural playground. But again, recognizing that they weren't advanced to capture everything through the details of the capital project, we want to build an expectation that it's all going to happen in one phase. We will go through the process, and subject to sort of affordability, we will sort of make those decisions at that time. And that's why we identified beach volleyball and natural playground as potential future elements that we would have to feed through the capital budget process, and that we will tender the project accordingly so that we can sort of manage the budget and the expectations and the delivery of the project.
No, and I understand that, but I hope that by reducing and taking out the change rooms, that you have enough money then to do the whole thing at once.
Our hope is to do the whole thing at once, but we will set the tender out accordingly.
Yeah, when my kids were young, they wanted beach volleyball. They now have grandchildren that are teenagers, so I think it's been
About
something. Yeah. So I hope that it does. And anyway, I'm sorry, I asked a lot of questions, but I think it's a great project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it done.
Councillor Collier. Have all your questions been answered?
No, not one.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
Chair.
why you have the opportunity to
Just
do
wondering,
so.
what was the original cost on this? The detail sheet included in this is just the 120,000 for the initial design or the detailed design. What was the original? Because I understand it's grown, so what was the original cost estimate on this?
Back in 2015, when
Sure.
we retained the consultant. I have a few projects in my head.
I thought that'd be part of this, that's why I'm asking you.
We're at a total project for the Paradise Beach of $3.6 million. That's road, that is park, and that is washer.
That's what it is now.
So, and that's what it's been. That hasn't changed. In our plan, we're still budgeting and working towards that $3.6 million budget number.
Okay, because I've seen the scope change quite a bit over time, so it's just, in my mind, thinking that the price tag was changing too. So you're saying, no, that's not the case, we're still on whatever the original capital forecast was. Sheila?
There's four projects. There's $600,000 that was previously approved for the wetland restoration. There was approximately $1 million for the road realignment. There's approximately, we were at approximately $1.8 million for the parks and washer.
Nine washers.
Those numbers haven't.
That's 200,000 a washer. All right.
No, now, I'd have to, I gotta get all the, I know what the numbers are and the budgets are individually in terms of how everything ties together and how we fund it. We've not changed the scope of work, and we've not increased or changed the budget over the last couple of years.
I just want to add, this is an example of doing a lot of due diligence before we get to the number as well. So we didn't just come in and then drop in a number on this. It didn't start at 200,000 and go to 3.6 million.
Are we venturing any of this?
Yes, there is. I just don't know the number off the top of my head.
Can you guess, ballpark?
I would have to
Is
look
it not
at
30% of 3.6 million?
I'm not sure how I calculated. It could have been on the building piece, so I'd have to look at it.
Somebody's whispering.
Is that anyone know?
Pardon me? I believe we set this up so that the playground work was all internal to venture, with one exception to the sustainability plan.
Yeah, so I think it's around 2.2 million is the internal dimension piece, but I'd have to go check to totally be sure.
So we've got a big project getting down to a certain number for next year. So debt servicing wise, I'm a little concerned because we haven't been adding a lot of debt since the Oddly Rec Center Phase 1. Now we're adding Oddly Rec Center Phase 2 plus this, plus the, what did we end up calling it, the Quaker
Meeting
house? I was out of the room for that, I missed that one. I see the numbers going up for the servicing going forward, so I don't want to lose sight of that goal we have of reducing the general levy over the next little while. That's
Yes,
still in sight?
Still, oh, absolutely.
Just reassure me?
I will reassure you that, we're following our course of action. I assured you as well that the new debt that's been identified as part of the Quaker Meeting House will not be impacting our base rate. We will be working towards and looking for strategies also not to allow the Paradise Park redevelopment. Right now, it is showing as an exception on our last set of reports, but we had talked about different strategies we might have on the settlement of the slots and so forth that we will continue to look to avoid hitting that tax rate.
Was this in the 5-year long-range capital forecast?
God, you guys have been there
Been there for a
forever.
long
Just
time.
checking.
10 years.
Just checking.
I've written about it in my 2 last budget reports.
Well, I remember us doing the waterfront plan back when we were meeting at the community center, so I just wondered when it got into it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. It's been in the forecast for 10 years, when we first did the waterfront master plan.
I
Right,
just
David?
said that.
Yeah, anyway.
I'm surprised you didn't know.
We've had numerous,
I just didn't remember.
public meetings on this. Was this the concept that we showed at the last public meeting?
Through the chair to Councillor Brown? Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And, sorry.
At the waterfront public meeting on
Yes,
May 4th,
yeah.
2017,
Okay.
these are the designs that were shown, along with the park elements.
And the 75 parking spaces, how many is that additional to now?
It's 72, it's 72 now.
Really?
When you take into account the parking on Lakeview Boulevard.
Oh, on Lakeview Boulevard, okay. So really, you'll still have parking on Lakeview Boulevard, so, no? Down from Pickering Beach Road, to the entrance of the park, will there be?
To that, in that section, there is on-street parking.
Yeah, so that's additional to the 75? Okay. Because that's an important piece in my mind, impacting the neighbors. This has been through a number of public meetings. And if we delay certain parts of it, do we have to go through other public open houses? No. So if you delayed a portion of it, would it be next year that you would be doing it, or year after that you could supposedly do it, or whatever?
We will feed it through our long-range capital forecast.
So if you wait 5 years, will you have to do public meetings again?
I would suggest, again, I hope that we're not pushing out 5 years.
But you would have to do public meetings if you would push it out.
It would be more the idea of a PIC that we would have where, like we do with a playground replacement, or we do something new, but we've got an endorsed concept plan approved by council, that we wouldn't be looking to create a community working group or having public meetings and coming back to GGC and CAP and those types of public meetings. It would strictly be a drop-in session to inform the neighborhood on the project elements.
Never drop-in session. And the toilets. They're getting smaller and smaller. And they tend to put the toilet roll here, and I'm a big girl, I know that, but I'm not that big. And I'm standing on my tiptoes to get into the bathroom. So I don't know what's going on with washrooms today, but they've got a lot smaller than they were. in the
People are
past.
getting bigger.
No, how does a big person get in?
I'm joking.
I'm not alone, I know that, but people don't open up, I don't care. But anyway, why do they put the toilet roll on the left? Should be on the right, where you get past the door opening. You have to get past the door, the toilet roll, past the door.
This is the strangest meeting I've ever been to.
That's what you get for criticizing bikes.
Well, that's a change in
Discussing the size of the toilet roll. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking
You got
of
anything
toilet rolls, can
stronger?
you go to the bathroom?
No, I'm talking about the wires. Anyway, so that's, a decent sized washer, they could change their clothes, but not in the size of this cleaning area, that's for sure. I'm concerned about delaying. I'd like to get this all done as ASAP. Probably if we finish next June, as for the Great Lakes Initiative Conference, so hopefully we can achieve that, and if it takes a bit more money, I think you should come back. I know Sean had a gulp there, but I think it would be better to do it all at once. Because then 5 years from now, they'll say, I didn't know that was going to happen. That's what they're saying now.
Whose voice is that?
Even though it's being the private sector. Thank you very much. A great job.
Can't believe I said this, but I agree with you.
I know that.
Okay, Mayor Parrish, it's your turn.
I just want to clarify on the point I missed. What is being kicked down the field here? What's being delayed? I wasn't clear on that.
The part,
The lawn.
So through the chair to Mayor Parrish, there are the elements that are all north. The parking, the road, the building, anything within Paradise Park will be developed as park, pending budget approval, pending that we have everything in line. It's the elements that are south of the building in the parking. So the future volleyball court and the future natural play area, we have them as future because we can set it up and get a price in the tender as a supplementary
Okay.
price.
But,
if the
okay, just
budget
that's all I need.
exceeds-
So
yeah.
you're basically saying that the whole package is there with the exception of the southern natural playground area and the future beach volleyball area. They might not happen in this first iteration and may not be on the site by the spring of 2018.
Correct,
But that's it.
correct.
Thank you, I'm good. And I'll move it.
Thank you. Any more questions? All in favor? Hello, all in favor? I guess we're all in favor. Thank you.
Thanks. What's our baseball team?
Baseball.
Okay, I'll make this real quick. Originally, I was going to provide a summary of sort of the state of sort of the baseball tournament infrastructure over the course of this coming summer, which is pretty much most weekends that we have from the early part of June all the way through to the early part of October. There's one period where I think there's an important event that we're just waiting finalization on, but it's with respect to Team Canada and their world, their junior national team. So you may or may not be aware, but the World Junior Championships are being held in Thunder Bay this year in the early part of September. So we've had discussions with the executive director from Baseball Canada, who essentially is looking to have sort of the U18 training camp in Ajax for a 10-day period. So that's essentially from August 18th to 28th. So they would appear to book their hotels at the Hilton Garden, so they'll be staying locally in Ajax for the 10-day period. They would have their training camp for the first 3 or 4 days. They then have the teams from Taiwan and Australia that are coming to Ajax and play a series of games, culminating in what's been referred to as a sort of a 3 Nations Cup. And we're going through the process right now to see if there's any sort of corporate sponsor interest to sort of name that tournament. So we put together sort of some logistics that we are working on, but I just thought it was important for council to be aware of that in the latter part of August. You know, it's really open to the town from a communications, from a promotion standpoint. I believe they will be playing 1 game at Kinsman Park in Oshawa. All the other games will be played here in Ajax. They then go to Toronto, they're down to Jay's Game on the evening of the 28th, and then they head up to Thunder Bay on the 30th for the World Championships. So it'll be some good baseball again at a national level, and again, these are the type of things that we did envision when we did submit our bid for the Pan Am Games. So that was just something I wanted to bring council.
Male or female? I didn't catch
It's male.
that. Male.
Yeah, they're right now playing in the Dominican. They play the Dominican League right now, sort of as a lead up, and they'll be back with them next week into Canada. So between that and the universities, colleges, and the provincial championship on Labor Day as well, there's lots of interest. The relationship with the Toronto Blue Jays, still the T12 camp. Roberto Alomar's having a fall invitational classic in September as well. UBC's having an evaluation camp. Ryerson has the university championship in October as well. So there's a number of fairly significant events that are being permitted at the.
Should I stay by the phones in case I get called up? Or?
I was going to say, are we expected to be there?
No, I know that, but again, I just think it's something that I do want council to be aware of, and then we will provide more details. And as you see promotions coming out, that council has an understanding of what's happening in the community through the summer months, especially knowing that we're going into our recess period. So just wanted to use it as an opportunity to provide a quick update.
Great. Councilor Collier.
Oh, just quickly, thanks, Dave. We took all the stands out after 10 M. Is there any plans to put any back in? If we're going to be attracting this caliber of baseball, it would make sense if we had some stands for the observation.
So we received some significant feedback over the last year from our user groups with respect to the lack of seating at the new ball diamond that was constructed. We have awarded in this year's budget, there was a contract to install two sets of stands sort of behind home plate. So that contract has been awarded. The work, if it's not underway, should be underway within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
It's accessible, so we do have an asphalt walkway that will be leading itself down towards where the stands are as well. And similar improvements being made to the artificial turf with respect to additional seating for people that are viewing games at the turf fields.
Okay, good. Is it a big number? Like, is it something that we can replicate on some of the others if we want to in a fairly short time frame? The cost of the infrastructure.
Another ball diamonds within town?
No, in the sportsplex. You're talking about just doing the one diamond, right? The main one, or is that seating at all?
No, we have seating at the other facilities.
Okay, so, but the one you're talking about right now that's going to start in the summer.
Yep, yeah, we've awarded it already.
Okay. But it's just the one main diamond?
Yeah, the other 5 have existing
Got it.
stands.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dave. Okay.
I'll move it.
No, I got a question. No moving anything.
I'll try to be as brief as possible as well.
Good luck with that.
And the active transportation wayfinding strategy was established to enhance the town's active transportation network to further increase the use of the network for recreation trips and expand it to include commuter or even utilitarian trips. The active transportation wayfinding strategy also integrates trail etiquette itself, and we also have a revised proposal for trail etiquette pavement markings for this year. Brief overview, we'll talk about sign types. The preferred option, which is called strong and consistent, as well as trail etiquette, and I'll brush on the next steps. So the different sign types that were established as part of this strategy include blades, posts, and banners, which really present important information to its users, such as highlighting key destinations, trail etiquette, and also the route that they're on, and of course directions. The bollards are a quick assurance information. It minimizes sign clutter. They're small in size, and it assures the users that they are on the specific trail and that they're traveling in the right direction. Of course, the kiosks and the combinations type of signage can include maps of the entire wayfinding system, provide information on key destinations, distances, and directions, and of course, trail etiquette. Tabletop is also commonly used for site and immediate surrounding information, such as history and ecology. We have some examples down at the waterfront today as well, and pavement markings that we use on active transportation facilities include on-road bike lanes and shared roadway facilities. The preferred option, strong and consistent. This was chosen and evaluated through consultation with other town departments, and this design itself really builds on the existing variety of signage that's out there on the waterfront and along some of the existing trails out there today. It's easily recognizable by the trail users and the residents themselves. And you can see here that there are certain examples of how trail etiquette could be integrated into the wayfinding strategy. So and this is really to minimize the amount of sign pollution, so that they're integrated into a single set of signage. And the revised trail etiquette proposal for this year, we've taken your comments into consideration from the November 2016 GGC, and we will not be proposing any new additional signage at this time. The existing trail etiquette signage that's out there today will remain, and in order to provide, and we will be providing pavement markings that indicate cyclists and residents to control their speed and to slow down to pass along the waterfront trail etiquette only at the important physical features along the trail. So slow down to pass will be placed at before sharp turns, and control your speed will be placed before any grade changes, if it's especially if it's a downhill. It will be placed ahead of time to warn users that nature. And of course, we'll be coordinating with our operations staff not to implement any new pavement markings in the emergency repair sections. So that is the revised proposal to really minimize the amount of sign pollution that's going to be out there. And the next steps of the wayfinding strategy is that we will bring a report back to the General Government Committee, and it will provide additional information on spacing guidelines with the intent to minimize sign pollution. That will provide some guidelines as to where signage will be placed. Should they be placed at key decision points? Is there a general spacing every 400 to 800 meters or beyond? So we will look at that closely, and also propose specific signage locations for the various trails and active transportation facilities in the town. And of course, we will be developing an implementation plan as well. And the implementation plan will be phased in a manner that's appropriate, whether it's we provide signage at certain trails or certain AT facilities per year, and that will include cost estimates as well.
Questions? Councilor Jordan.
Thank you. I like the pavement markings. I'm glad to see us trying that. And did I hear you say you're going to look at the new alignment? I thought you did, but I just wanted to make sure, because you gave us a map with markings, but we didn't have the new alignments off for the emergency.
Yes, that's right.
So I heard you correctly. Good. And we have an Ajax app. Is there a way of doing something through that people could find their way through the town on the bicycle? I have it in my car, and it tells me where to go in polite ways. And
In the very, very best sense of it.
Pardon?
In the very best sense of the word.
Yes, and it even tells me to, I don't know what the message is. Every time I put it on, it tells me to be cautious and all this stuff. So anyway, is that something we could look at?
Through the chair, we can certainly consider the option.
Okay, if you could talk to communications, because that's where we're going to go with it, I would think.
You have to understand the capabilities of the system.
Yeah.
If I can, Madam Chair, yeah, we'll look at it. Ajax is not a GPS kind of system, but that's why, if Council will recall the open data that we provided, the intent by providing open data is to have enthusiastic bikers and walkers create that. So we will look at it, but Ajax is not intended to be a GPS system, but we can certainly encourage people through the open data. We'll take it away, but I don't want to have an expectation that Ajax is also going to be a GPS system. We'll certainly look at
It
it.
should be some, maybe Mayor Parrish will look into that as he's cycling.
I will.
We will make sure.
And as an IT savvy kind of guy, I will have a solution in no time.
Google Maps.
I have a question.
No, I'm not.
Is anybody else?
I tried to send that.
I'll move it.
No, I have a question. Okay, so off the waterfront signage, I think they're great. Okay, so I went out for a bike ride along Taunton Road, and I got to Harwood, and it took me into a trail, but I wanted to stay on Taunton Road, and so I went up one side and ended up like 6 inches from a car. And so then I thought the next day I won't do that. So then I ended up getting lost in Ward 2 somewhere in here with all of
No
those
sense of direction.
things. None. I need a
No,
GPS.
some of us need
So, but there's no signage to get back to the trail on Taunton Road. Like there's many ways to get out of the trail, but you end up like lost. And so finally I did. At the third try, I did finally get back up there, but there's absolutely no signage at all. So
That's why we have this report.
I really need, that's for the waterfront. I need this signage up here. Is this
no,
all
but
this is gonna be all over
All over
town?
town,
All
yeah.
over
town.
town.
Trail
All right. I asked one question in 5 hours and I get yelled at. This is the one I got lost in.
No, it's signage, it's wayfinding for all over town, Roslyn, Taunton.
Are we gonna ever extend that little piece of that Taunton?
It's
trail?
there, you go
It's
down
there.
to
I
the
know
bridge,
it's not
you go
extended.
down to the bridge.
Why
and
do I
then-
gotta go down? Why can't we just make
Could
it?
we leave this till later and you two figure out where you're going?
Here, you just go down to the
I
bridge,
was in the
you
bathroom
continue
for
to the
20
right, it
minutes.
takes you back
I'm
up
just
to
asking
Taunton,
about
it's
the
easy
trail.
peasy.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then I'll have to follow you. Okay, thank you, Hubert. That's fine, that's great. Any other questions? Motion to...
No, you moved it.
Okay, all in favor? Good, all right.
Okay, so that ends the
We have a
open.
5-minute.
Well,
We're done.
yes,
You know what
yes,
we
of
do
course.
need
Do your
is
250 steps and
street
come back.
names on a map would be helpful.
Right across. They can't do that.
So, okay, so what we did, for whatever reason, is we approved the house.
I didn't. That's great.
So as soon as you cross Harwood, it takes